It's often hard to predict how that's going to project. And we went through this yesterday in our little rehearsal, and you still can't really predict how it's going to come out. So thank you for letting me know what I'm actually showing you. So we're here to discuss and be certified for Concours Judging and Mercedes-Benz cars. And to just go through, whoops, 2 slides. Our agenda for today, why, a little forwarding words about why we teach it, what you expect of the entrants, what we expect of the judges, the scoring methodology, a little bit about show versus street, and then we'll talk a lot about what to look for and how to score, and then we have a quiz at the end. Now this is going to be pretty long, and so when we get to about an hour, we'll take a break, and then we'll take a break afterwards. We'll do questions and a break, and then we'll have a 20-question quiz, and we'll discuss all the answers to the quiz. So that's kind of our schedule for today. So, why do we teach this course? First, from the Peachtree perspective, one of the challenging pieces about running concours is having enough judges. And so for Peachtree, we're after having enough judges to run our concours on the 18th of September. But from a larger perspective within MBCA, we do this to try to standardize the judging process across the MBCA so that when you go from one section to another, you get judged about the same way, and the scores are going to be about the same because of the consistency in the way we do business. And it also tends to take the subjectivity out of the judging process when you understand what we're supposed to be doing and how to use the scoring sheet. Now, I personally believe that a single mark car club should have concours as one of the things it does. I think it's an important aspect of the club and about maintaining essentially the cars properly. And so I think it's really important, which is why I'm willing to spend time doing this training and being a concours judge. We're going to teach you about what our judging rules are, what we expect from you for the judge, what you're supposed to look for, how to score, how to use the score sheet, and, how to get through the judging process in an efficient way. And, you'll be certified to judge if you get through all this. I'm going to help calibrate the scoring a little bit too, the scoring process. So when you're done with this, be confident, be consistent, and be fair. And you recognize you're not going to know everything. No one does. There's going to be an area that you're more comfortable with than in other areas, but you're qualified to judge each of the areas. And you can certainly do it with the information that we give you in this course and use of the scoring sheet. Now, my favorite thing is engine compartments. The last concours I judged, I was doing exteriors. And of course, since we know what the rules are, we certainly can do any of the sections after completing this course. And the other thing that I think about, and one thing that Pete even pointed out last time we gave this course, was that once you've done this, you're a lot better at evaluating cars when you're looking at them for purchase as well. It really steps up your ability to just look at a car and see what issues it might have. And the other aspect of this is have fun. Concours is fun. Judging is fun. It's just an enjoyable process. So we want you to enjoy the course and enjoy concoursing. A couple of references here. I asked you to have those scoring sheets out in front of you. And the other thing I rely on is the MBCA National and Regional Events Rulebook, which is available on under the Resources tab under the MBCA.org website, the national website. You'll have to log in to see that, but it's in there. Okay. So let's go over to entrance etiquette. This is what we expect from our entrants. And we cover this. Well, a lot of us are also entrants, but the judges need to know what the entrants ought to be doing. Now, of course, we expect the entrants to arrive on time and be ready, know the day's schedule. There's the score sheet. The upper section of it needs to be filled out by the entrant. And once we start judging, the cleaning and detailing needs to be done, and to remove the things that need to be removed from the car. And we expect the entrant to be near the vehicle so that they can present the vehicle or be available for questions while it's being judged. That sometimes is a bit of a challenge. when one of the, when, for example, you're also a judge, but we usually work out a way to, okay. So I go over this because one, a lot of us are entrants as well. And the other is that judges need to know what to expect from the entrants. And so the entrants need to be on time, arrive early. They need to be ready at the start time. They need to know the day's schedule. And of course, there's things on top of the scoring sheet that the entrant needs to fill out. The entrant needs to be done with the cleaning and the detailing when the judging starts. And they need to have all the stuff removed from the cars that needs to come out. And we expect them to be near the vehicle so they can present the vehicle while you're judging it. But then not too close. You know, they need to stand back and not hassle the judges, you know, allow the judges to do their job without interference. They do need to be available for questions. They can ask questions. It's best to do that after the judging is done. Judges typically have a lot of cars and a certain period of time it needs to be done in. I'm glad to answer entrants' questions, but after the judging is done, because I'm always a little nervous about getting through all the cars first. Now, we've all been to these car shows where the cars will have posters and books and, you know, window stickers and all that laid out. We don't want to see that. Oh,
Oops.
it tends to actually kind of get in the way. I mean, if I were doing that, I would probably put those over whatever stains in the carpet in the trunk were there to hide them. But you don't want to see those things. You don't give them any notion. And if they're in the way of your judging, you ask them to be removed. Now, also, we expect the vehicles to stay on the judging grounds until the event's concluded. One, it's to, you know, they're spectators and they should get the enjoyment of seeing these vehicles. It also is a little bit of a safety issue if you're moving vehicles while there's still spectators walking around. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the judge's etiquette and the kind of processes you go through. You know, first, as you start the day, walk through the field, look what's there, get a feel for the competition. You're not judging, but you do have to make a decision on where you're going to start. And I would generally say, you know, don't start at the best car in the field. You know, decide your team who's going to be the team leader, which may be assigned. You typically will have 3 people: a scribe, a lead, and an observer or a second judge. And we will usually assign it. Now, start on time. Start randomly. Since the way we do this is to assign a judge team for, say, engine compartment, a judge team for paint and coach work, a judge team for interior upholstery trunk, and so on. The various areas on the score sheet. And so you can't have 2 judging teams working on the same car at the same time. So you kind of have to spread out and go in different places. We are recording this, right, Diana?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't
yes.
see the recording thing up. Okay. Now, dress appropriately. Now, we don't want to do any damage to the car. So it's really important to have no metal and no loose objects that could fall in a car. And what I usually do with my belt buckle is I wear one that's not very prominent, and also usually slide the belt buckle off to the side so there's no issue with the potential to scratch a car. Now, also, we don't touch the car. We don't get in the car. You don't have to be inside the car to judge the interior, for example. When it's time to judge the interior, you ask the owner to open the doors, the hoods, and the trunk. But you don't touch the car. And that's a basic piece of Mercedes-Benz Concours. So I'm getting some background noise. If you're not muted, please go ahead and mute.
I will mute them.
Okay.
I'll take care of
that. Now, when you start judging the car, you introduce yourselves to the entrant. And of course, you do also thank them for bringing their vehicle, because, you know, we want them to enjoy this. We want them to learn, and we want them to come back the next time. Okay. If the entrant needs to be addressed, it's the responsibility of the team leader to do that, of the head judge from your little team. And when might you need to do that? Well, you might need to ask about the options. which options codes it really has, or the color or the mileage. And I want to point out, if there's a doubt, you give the entrant the benefit of the doubt. I mean, think about this. What we're trying to do is have a very vibrant concours program. We want the entrants to come back, and we want them to feel like they've been treated fairly. So if there's a doubt, resolve the doubt and the benefit of the doubt in the favor of the entrant. And it is possible to do the findings before moving on to the next car. I've always found I don't have time to do that, but I'm glad to do that after we're finished judging. Now, of course, responsibilities, do what we just said, but you've got to be objective. You've got to use the score sheet. And you've got to use the rules and do what it says. You've got to stay within the scope of your judging responsibilities. And what I mean by that is that if you're the engine compartment judge, you're not judging the interior, and you don't take off, you don't even mention something to the interior judge that you see. And why is that? Because we're after consistent judging, in the same eyes looking at the car in the same ways. And so you can't insert yourself outside your area of responsibility. And watch the clock to make sure you get done on time. Yeah, this is really important from the consistency perspective, as well as getting the score sheets in so you have time to get them reduced before your award ceremony. It's important because if you don't watch the clock, if you don't look at how much time you have and divide by the number of cars so you know about how much time you can spend on each car, you'll get to the end and you'll start getting rushed, and then you won't be spending as much time on those cars as you did on the earlier cars, and that's just not fair to the entrants. So you need to be spending about the same amount of time on each car. Some clubs actually, not MBCA, but I've seen judging such that you have 5 minutes to judge and somebody with a stopwatch. Now, we don't do that, but you could if you really wanted to. And the other thing I want to point out, not on the slide, is don't be the judge that's out to get somebody for something. There's an oolie that you're going to get somebody on. That's not the attitude that we want. We want entrants to feel like they've been treated fairly, to enjoy the process, to have a transparent process, and we want them to come back the next time. So we can't be kind of out to get them. That's the wrong attitude. When in doubt about authenticity, go off and talk to the chief judge in a discreet manner. Give the entrant the benefit of the doubt. No one knows all the answers on authenticity, and our chief judge, Eric Gilmer, is a lot better at it than I am. I'm pretty good on 129s, on 124s. He's really good at especially the older cars. And if I have a question, I'll go off and whisper in his ear, but the entrant gets the benefit of the doubt. Now, you shouldn't be judging a friend's car, a car that you're really familiar with. And of course, you really can't be judging in a class where your car is as well. And so that's the good thing about having 3 people on the team. If you've got you and another judge and the scribe, you can just not do that class and have the other judge member of your team do those. Now, we write down what the deductions are for in the comments column on the score sheet. And then we put the minus the amount of points that are on it. That way we are transparent, and you can explain to the entrant why you took off for something. And if the entrant's kind of getting in the way of the judging, you just have to politely ask them to step back until you're done. And that's when it's appropriate to talk to them. And of course, I mentioned the gaudy displays, photos, or whatever, and ask them to be removed if they're in the way of the judging. But you don't give them any thought as far as scoring. That's not what we're about. We're about the car, not about neat magazine pictures or photos of the restorations. You don't go back to a car to rescore it, especially to change something that you missed. Don't do that. You've got to be consistent in the way you look at the cars, and you can't go back. You don't ask another team to make a judgment for you. This is part of the consistency. If you've got an issue with something, ask the chief judge. And never, never, never hold little meetings about the car where the entrant can hear. I mean, that can be pretty offensive to the entrant if he hears something that you're saying about the car, it's negative about the car. So you just absolutely can't do that. I go back to the notion of we want the entrants to come back in the future, so we can't be doing things like that. And we thank the entrants for bringing their cars. And Cheryl just brought me a cup of coffee, so I thank her for doing that. Okay. I mentioned sticking to your area. You never mention another team of a flaw outside your area. And I've never seen this, but if you have an irate entrant, let the chief judge or the concourse chair handle that one. And of course, you can't judge your own car, and you can't judge cars within your class. And that's where you swap to the other judge and let them do that class. And I'm going to say, above all, be consistent in your scoring. I'm going to return to consistency a number of times in here. In fact, I've got a slide here about my thoughts on consistency. Well, obviously, take the same amount off for the same deficiency. But I think there's more to it than that. Judging the cars in the same condition, our rules require the top be up or the tops are on. You've got to judge glass, so the windows need to all be up. You need to judge the same things on the cars. It's the same characteristics. There are a couple of classes that we judge, especially the 107s and the 124s. Some of them have batteries in the trunk that you can't see because of the covers, and some of them have batteries in the engine compartment. If you've got a mixed class so that some of the cars have the batteries in the trunk invisible and some of them are in the engine compartment, then you don't judge the battery because it would be unfair to those that had the battery in the engine compartment. Judge in the same order. I find the score sheet is very useful, and I usually just go down the score sheet, and that helps me consistently look at a car. That is, look at the car in the consistent fashion. Engine compartment, the first thing, cooling system, HVAC system. And so that disciplines me to look at the car the same way. And when I say judge in the same manner, I mean have a consistent set of movements. Try to put your eyes in the same places on each car for consistency. When I do a judging, say, the interior, I will have the contestant open the doors, and then I'll kneel outside the driver door and look in a set of places. And then I'll go to the next door, kneel outside that door, look in a set of places, and so on around the car. And I'll do that the same way for each car. And I'll try to have my eyes go to the same place for each car. That's just part of consistency, and it's part of the discipline. It also helps you spend about the same amount of time on each car as well. Consistency is exceedingly important as we do this. We have, if you look at those score sheets, the score sheets each have 100 points on them. Both show and street are 100 points. We use quarter point deductions. We write that on the score sheet. We write them as a fraction. We don't use decimals. It's just easier to reduce the scores if we don't do the decimals. And there's 5 categories that are judged by separate teams, as I've mentioned, 2 to 3 person teams. And so if you look on the right side of the slide, those are the amount of points that are allocated to the various parts on the score sheet. Now in show class, 8 points are for the chassis, and for the street class, those 8 points are used for a mileage and an age handicap. So you get extra points if you have a lot of mileage in the car, and you get extra points if the car is older. And just some more about the score sheet. There's a separate line item on the score sheet within each category for cleanliness, corrosion, dirt, leaks, and stains. If you look at this, there's only about 6 points on the show class, on the street class score sheet for dirt, cleanliness, corrosion, leaks. I mean, there's only 7 points on the show class. So you can really say that that our concours is really not about who has the cleanest car. It's about who has the most original, authentic car. Of course, you don't win a concours with dirt in the car, but there's a lot more to our concours than just cleanliness. The emphasis is on authenticity and condition, except when in the paint category, where there's also deductions of poor quality of bodywork and paint imperfections and fit. And so, elaborating on that, authenticity and condition are combined within the line item in each category. Half of the points in each line item are authenticity, and half of the points are condition. And so if you're judging engine or interior where parts get swapped out for non-original things, you get deductions for that. You should expect to see Mercedes-Benz authorized factory replacement parts in the places that you can see them. And that's a key piece about MBCA concours. And so let's just go through very quickly the points. The engine compartment, this is what's on your score sheet. Notice in the engine compartment, everything is either 2 or 1 point. If you look over at paint and coachwork is mostly 1s and 2 points, but there's a couple of things that are higher. The sight lines and the panel alignments are 4 points. The paint imperfections, and this is the largest thing on the entire score sheet, is 5 points, and the quality of the bodywork is 3 points. So you see how that part is really emphasized. If you go to trunk and interior, you see most of those are 1s and 2s, but there's the seats are 4 points. The dash instrument controls, and that's a lot of stuff, is 3 points. The headliner and sun visor is 3 points. Everything else is 1s and 2s. And the glass lights and chrome part, which is a total of 20 points, they're again mostly 1s and 2s, except the grills and the front bumper guard, which is 4, and where I've got my cursor here, the door seals, trim, handles is 3 points. And in show class, there's only 8 points on chassis, and everything's 1 point. And honestly, in Peachtree, we very often don't do the stuff that you have to lay under the car for. We just give them the benefit of those. But because if you are doing show class where you're doing the bottom of the car, you need something to lay on because you're going to lay under the car. And you need to also be careful and do the lowest car first, because it's not fair to essentially penalize a car where you have good access to get under the entire car and can see all of it. So you've got to be, for the purposes of consistency, just take off the things that you can see on the lowest car. Imagine a Geländewagen versus an AMG car, not that they'd be in the same class, but you can pretty much crawl under a Geländewagen, and most of the AMG cars are so low that you're not going to get your head under anything. Okay, this is an example of the sheets, which I expect that you probably already have them in front of you. You don't have to memorize these, of course, because you're going to have them when you're doing judging, but you do need to kind of understand them and how to use them. And there's a few notes at the bottom that we'll periodically go over as well. So you've got those in front of you. I'm not going to talk in too much detail yet, but we're going to see a lot of examples on what to take off for and how much you ought to be thinking about taking off for. Now, show versus street class. Let's talk a little bit about that. Show class cars are at least 25 years old. I will sometimes incorrectly refer to this as concours class. It's really called show class in the rule book, but you'll hear me say that sometimes. Both classes are judged at 100 points. We expect the instruments to be in working condition. It's within the bounds of judging in a show class to actually check that everything's working. Realistically, you often don't have time to do that, but you can certainly do that. If you do that on one car, you need to do it on every car in the same way. And you do that by asking the owner to operate those things. You do not operate them yourself. You can trailer the car to the event in show class. In street car, there's a 2-point penalty if you trailer the car to the event. And I mentioned previously, street class is really 92 points plus 4 points extra for mileage and age. If you change the color of the car, there's a half-point deduction unless it's actually a Mercedes color that would be used that year, in which case it's only a quarter point. And that goes for both of the classes. And I mentioned the trailering penalty. There's a few other things that are in the rule book that I'll mention to you here. One is that for street class, any OEM window glass that meets specifications is acceptable. In both classes, white walls or black wall tires are both fine, but for show class, all 5 tires are expected to match unless it still has the original spare, which is acceptable. And the tires must be the original size. The car badge bars, license plate frames, extra driving lights and such are okay in street class. In show class, we expect it to really be exactly as it came from the factory. But you can put MBCA badges on the cars in both classes without penalty. In street class, you can have European headlights on the cars without penalty, even if they weren't originally on the car. In show class, we expect them to be as they were delivered, original headlights. And for the engine compartment judges, if you're in street class, you don't inspect the engine compartment below the body sheet metal. Okay, next slide. Now we're going to go through the various parts of the score sheet and talk about what you might very well see. And we'll also try to calibrate your scoring a little bit on the thought process on how much to take off, which I think is important. So let's first talk about interior upholstery and trunk. Here's some things that you might often see. For example, cracked dash. And on 107s, very often, they really very often have cracked dash issues. And a lot of people have inexpensive dash covers on. So you want to look to see if it's a dash cover as well. The instruments tend to get discolored. The paint on the needles gets a little bit lighter. Sometimes the plating on the instrument bezels gets pitted or is deteriorated, especially on the older cars like the Pagodas, the 107s, the 109s and the 108s. The heat control levers stick and then a knob breaks off. You'll often see 3 good knobs and one broken one. A lot of folks change radios or put speakers in. The woods will usually crack after a while. The sun visors will kind of get soft and puffy looking. You might see stains on the headliner, or if the top was replaced, it wasn't not quite done right. So you might see glue marks, or you might see wrinkles on the top, the headliner. Incorrect upholstery changes. Sometimes you actually see cars that came with MB text interiors that have leather instead. And sometimes that's a little hard to tell too. Condition of the original upholstery. And I'll show you a slide here. Cracks in the leather are okay as long as they don't go through the dye. Different carpets, carpet condition, floor mat, trunk mat, spare tire, jack in the cars that you can actually see them. And there's a place on the score sheet for toolkit and first aid kit. And I'll caution you on first aid kit because the cars before about 72 didn't have first aid kits. And there's also an option of first aid kit delete. And so if a car had first aid kit delete, then they're not going to have a first aid kit. All right, let's look at a few pictures of what you might see. Now this is an example of kind of stains on the headliner, and it's also got some stains in here if you can see my cursor. Can you see my cursor on this? There?
Yes, we can see it. Okay.
Yes, we can see it.
And you can't see it if I do this? Can't see that? You're not seeing that. Okay, I need to do that over here.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's stains over here in the interior and there's stains on the headliner there. Okay, and the next one here, and this is all good looking things. You see the original radio looks good, the wood looks nice, no cracks, a neat little handle tag that you don't often see, but it is correct. And note the cracks on this leather, but it's not through the color coat. And so that's perfectly acceptable. There's no deductions for that. Now let's look at the next one. This is not quite the same. Now we have, this is a Pagoda, I think. We've got an aftermarket radio, so that's not okay. This is one where it has 4 heater control levers and one of them's actually broken off. And look at the clock. The clocks are supposed to work. Just look to see if it has today's time. And notice the AC down here. Now, on a Pagoda, the AC was a dealer installed option. The dealer installed optional air conditioning on a Pagoda is acceptable, but it's got to be the dealer installed optional AC. And on the next slide here, I'll show you there are 2 different types of air conditioners that were installed on Pagodas by the dealer: Coolmeisters and Frigikings. But there's something similar between the 2. Look at the pattern of the vents versus the controls. It's always vent, panel, vent, panel, vent in both of them. And if you look back, I'm going to go back one slide here. This one has vent, vent. This is not an original AC unit on the car, and so that's penalized. These, if you see these, they're okay, although this one's missing a knob right here. Of course, both these cars have aftermarket radios, but that's not what I'm scoring on this one. So let's look at this. This is just a random picture of a car you might be judging. This is a 129. And let's see what we can see. Now, we're doing the interior. So we grab the score sheet for interior. Interior upholstery and trunk. There's a total of 22 points on interior upholstery and trunk. So what do we see? Well, seat coverings. Now note, these are cracked. These leather cracks are through the color and into the back of the, what's behind it. Both seats have these type of cracks. So seat coverings is a total of 4 points. There's only 2 seats in this car, and so it's essentially 2 points per seat. 2 points are 2 points per seat. One then would be authenticity, one would be condition. So I'd say driver's seat cracking, probably a 1/4 point. Passenger seat cracking, probably a 1/4 point. And look up here at the headrest here. There's a stain on this headrest. And so, maybe another 1/4 point for that. And we continue to look around. And it may be hard to see on your computer, but there's a lot of wear up here on the steering wheel cover in the area where my cursor is. And steering wheel, gear shift, and signal stalks, you'll see on the score sheet is a maximum of 2 points. And so it's probably appropriate to do a 1/4 point off on the steering wheel for this. Look over here on the door panel. There's a stain here. And so if you look, door inside coverings, it's 2 points. And so I'd probably take a 1/4 point off for this stain over here. And note how dirty the area is where the driver's hand goes on this handle. And I would probably go to the dirt, dust stains on interior at the bottom there, which is 1 point max, and probably take a 1/4 off for that. And of course, I'll point out the top is down on this car. You're going to judge the car with the top up. And so if I walk up to a car, we're judging the tops down, I'll tell them to put the top up because we have to judge it that way. Okay, let's go to another picture. All right, there's a reason I selected this picture. Okay, this is, I think, a Pagoda. And note that it's got a steering wheel cover on it. It's not supposed to have a steering wheel cover. That's an authenticity issue. So how much do we take off for that? Okay, so we're on interior still. Under the line steering wheel, gear shift, signal stalks. There's 2 points in there shared between the steering wheel, the signal stalks, and the shifter that you can't see in this picture. And so I might say for authenticity, a 1/4 point for that steering wheel cover. Then you look more carefully and you see, well, there's a crack here in the steering wheel, so that's a condition issue. That's probably a 1/4 point. There's a raised area in this pad. This is supposed to be all smooth. So you might say maybe another 1/4 point off, but you've got to always be careful to take the points off in proportion to the amount of points for that area. In this case, we've got 2 points that are shared between the steering wheel, gear shift, and the signal stalks. And so you start taking off a whole bunch of stuff on the steering wheel, and you're probably taking off too much. I'm not sure you ought to deduct 3/4 of a point for the steering wheel alone. So maybe just stop there. But notice a few other things. We have an aftermarket radio here. So you look at there, that goes under dash, including instruments, radio, clock, glove box, 3 points. There's a lot of things in that 3 points. So I'd probably just take off 1/4 for that radio. Okay, so my methodology here is look at how much the area is, see how much, what a proportion of that area the specific piece you're looking at is, and take off points according to that. And don't overdo it. It's really pretty easy to overdo it. I'll give you some examples of how you'd be tempted to do that. Okay, here is a pagoda. And I grabbed this picture specifically to show you the air conditioning here. Now notice the configuration of this. This is vent, vent, panel, vent, vent, which is not the configuration of the original Frigid King and Coolmaster dealer installed AC systems. So that's not the original AC system on the car. So that's worth probably 1/4 point. And why? Well, it comes under probably dash, including instruments, radio, clock, glove box. And that's 3 points that are spread out on a whole lot of things. And so probably 1/4 point's appropriate for authenticity there. Okay, let's roll to another interior. This is a 129. And this is one where, gee, where do I put this? See this little cargo net? It normally has a little point here and a little point here where it's attached. So where's that on the score sheet? There's no place on the score sheet for cargo nets. Well, I would probably put that under carpeting because it goes into the carpeting. Carpeting on this car is 2 points. I might take off, say, 1/4 point for that. And one of my points with this one is that there's some things that don't quite fit in all the categories of the score sheet. And so familiarity with the score sheet and familiarity with those things that don't quite fit is very helpful. But whatever you do with it, be consistent from car to car. If you see this on another car, make sure you take off about the same amount in the same place on the score sheets. Okay. Here's an authenticity issue. Look how pretty the underside of that trunk is. That's a 107. Now, 107s have black colored trunk undersides, not body color. This car was totally repainted, and the person that did it didn't know that. And so this is supposed to be black up here. So how do we score that? Well, let's look down on trunk finish coverings. There's only 1 point in trunk finish and coverings. And of course, you're looking at the whole trunk, not just the underside of the trunk lid. And so that's probably, if you say it's 1 point there, that means it's a 1/2 point for condition, a 1/2 point for originality. You really probably shouldn't take off a whole 1/2 point on that because there's a whole bunch of other things you're evaluating in the trunk. And so that's probably a 1/4 point. All right.
Gary,
So
Gary, we got a question before we move on, I think, because you hit on the air conditioning.
Okay.
Pete Engel asked about Behr, B-E-H-R, was that also an early Mercedes-Benz AC supplier? I don't believe that was true for the pagodas, Behr. I think it was just those two.
Yeah. To the best of my knowledge, it's only the Coolmeister and the Frigid King. Although honestly, if it has the same vent and panel configuration, I would never pick up on it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Paint and coachwork. So some things you might see there. And remember, there's a couple of areas in paint and coachwork that have 4 and 5 points, which is unique on the score sheet. Stone chips on the hood, fender fit left and right. Body lines on a Mercedes are perfect from the factory. And so it's very hard if a car has been damaged and has bodywork to replicate that. And you have to look for that when you're scoring these. Rusty lower front valence, chips on the fenders, rocker panel fit everywhere, really. Uneven gaps, the fenders, doors. Excessive orange peel. Now let's talk about orange peel a little bit. First, what is orange peel? And orange peel is hard to photograph. I'm going to go to that in a minute. you know, a paint condition, correct color for the tag or for the model year. Let's talk about orange peel. Okay, I've got a picture here that shows some orange peel. It's very hard to photograph orange peel. This is a car that's had some body work. You'll never see this type of cracking unless there's body work under it. But what I wanted to show you, see how the reflection up here looks like the peel of an orange? On older Mercedes, you know, the pre 80s, especially pre 90s cars, but a Pagoda, even a 107, the 300 SLs, the paint's perfect. And you do not see orange peel like this. And so if you see orange peel on an older car like that, it's because it's been repainted and the person didn't do the paint really very well, and it didn't get buffed out, because those cars just don't have orange peel. But one of the things I've noticed is the newer the cars get, the more orange peel there is. It might be a little hard to see. I mentioned that photographing orange peel is difficult. This is a 2008 R320. Contrast the way the reflection is in this window up here, which is glass and it's a perfect reflection, versus the way it is in this body panel. See how this edge is variegated, and the reflection in the gas cap and the side kind of look like an impressionistic painting, like something Monet would do. You know, that's orange peel, and this car's never been repainted. What I have noticed is starting in the mid 1990s, there's more and more orange peel in the factory paint. And so if you're judging the class, say 129s or you know, something after about mid 90, after about 95, you start seeing more and more orange peel in the paint. And that's the way it came from the factory. So you really can't take off for it. And in a class like 129s, which were built from 1990 to 2002, you know, the 1990 cars may not have much orange peel at all, and the 2002 cars may have some. So you have to be very careful to be fair on this, because the factory finish for the newer cars has a pretty fair amount of orange peel in it. Okay, paint and coach work. Body lines. Compare the left side to the right side, the left fender to the right fender. Look at this picture down here about the hood. You know, hood gaps. Compare left to right. And some of our cars really show off hood gaps badly, especially the mid 2000s body design really shows off errors in hood gaps very, very blatantly. There's a chrome strip on this door. This car did not come with a chrome strip on the door. The other bad thing about that is it makes it very hard to evaluate that body seam if there's something in the seam. One of the things you see on pagodas, I think probably about half the pagodas I've ever looked at are missing this little notch right here. The windshield, the headlight surround on a pagoda is symmetric, and there's a body panel on the outside that this little thing lines up with. And so Mercedes put a little notch in the inside as well, so it would line up with it. And a person that is doing a restoration on a pagoda that doesn't really understand Mercedes will often make this go away. And like I say, I think of the 3 pagodas that were at Hilton Head year before last, 2 of them didn't have this little notch that was visible. So that's an authenticity deficiency if that's not apparent. Look over at this wheel cover. So what's wrong here? Well, these wheel covers are painted body color. And so you see chrome to here, and then this area in here is all body color. So that's not correct. The big white wall or black wall would be fine on that car, by the way. Okay, sight lines. You know, when I do exterior, you know, I'm looking at first the body panels. I look at the front, I look at the rear for the trunk, I look at each side for the doors, and then I try to shine the light off the sides of the car to see if I can detect any door dings or any body work on the side. And you can really only see that by shining the light off the car. So you have to get in a position where you can do that. And of course, this car is very, very nice. You know, there's nothing there. And notice this car has fender lip chrome. There's very few Mercedes that actually came from the factory with fender lip chrome. This is one that did. This is a 600. And we'll talk a little bit more about fender lip chrome in a bit. So let's just evaluate a few. Okay, this is a car that I found, and I wanted to specifically have you look at the door lines. This door line, compare that body seam to this body seam. The rear body seam here on the door is smaller than the front. Mercedes don't come from the factory that way. They're basically always perfect. The other thing I see, and this may be limited by your monitor, but this paint doesn't really look like it matches that paint. So let's go to our score sheet and see what we might take off for that. So under paint and coachwork, which is a total of 25 points, the gaps, doors, hood, deck lid, 2 points max. And so I'd say about a quarter point for that rear door gap. Now under paint color is 2 points max. Door paint not matching to actually the quarter point paint not matching the door, probably a quarter point off. Other thing to note, looks like there's a lug bolt missing. That's under wheels. Wheels is under paint and coachwork, wheels and wheel covers. There's only 1 point in there for those. And so maybe that's a quarter point. And let me show you the other side of this car. Look at these 2 door panel gaps. Let's look at the other side of the car. So you can always walk around the other side of the car and see what that looks like and see if your eyes are calibrated properly. And notice these door gaps look very good. And the color on the entire this side of the car is pretty consistent. It's also consistent, and it looks like it's missing a lug nut over here.
Gary, I think here's the perfect question has come along since you've got this car up here about pinstriping. Nancy, you asked the perfect question about why pinstriping should be deducted or not deducted versus the AC.
Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about pinstriping in the farther along, but we'll address it now. These cars did not come from the factory with pinstriping, and about half of them probably have pinstriping, and I would take off for pinstriping. You could argue about how much to take off. I would say probably a quarter point for pinstriping, and that's under in paint and coachwork. I'd probably call it imperfections in paint, which is that 5 point area. You might even justify taking 2 deductions of a quarter for it. I think I'd probably take a quarter point off for it. And you'll see that on an awful lot of 107s. The dealers, I think, were using that as a little extra profit thing, but we take off for that.
Yeah, well, I think her question is, why do we do that versus the AC in the Pagoda?
Yeah, we have a specific exception essentially for the Pagodas on that dealer installed option, and we never made that exception in the rules for the pinstriping. And that's one of the few exceptions I know of for that where we've allowed a dealer installed thing to be okay.
Yeah. Okay. And we had another question about the paint, or really a comment, or it is a question. I think I know the answer, but I'm gonna let you answer it. Is about orange peel, that the newer cars have orange peel. Is that a result of moving away from the urethane paints?
I don't know the answer to that question. I suspect it has to do with how fast they're pushing them through the paint booth, and they're not spending any time doing external buffing to remove that type of thing. What's your take on that one?
I believe I did hear when I was in Germany, when we were at the factory, I do believe that I heard the guys in the paint area say that that is one of the reasons why we're getting more orange peel. But Michael Perlato, excuse me if I didn't pronounce your last name correctly, did mention that, one of his section members has a 69-280 SL that has original orange peel on the doors. And I have seen that as well. I have seen older cars have orange peel on them. So.
Yeah.
It's rare, but it did happen.
Yeah, I have one Concours car, not a Mercedes, that actually has a couple of defects in the paint that came from the factory that way too, which fortunately no Concours judges have ever found, but I'm not exactly pointing them out either.
Okay, Nancy, I'll address. Yeah, I agree with you, Nancy. It is an unfair deduction about the pinstriping, but I had a 107 and same thing. It was something that the dealer did, but that's just our rules on pinstriping. So
yeah, mine
but quite frankly, if you're in, I will say this, if you are judging that section of the cars and you're doing 107s, the team as a whole can decide among themselves with the captain that you're not going to deduct for pinstriping, but you got to be consistent. You can't deduct one car from pinstriping and another one for not. So there is a little bit of latitude there if you're in a group, and you can kind of do that.
Yeah, you could consult with the chief judge on that one. And
Right, exactly. So let's see, what else do we have here? I think I'm going to hold off on some of the wheel questions. I think David will get to there's been a couple wheel questions about chrome wheels and yellowing white walls, but I think you'll get to that later.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm mentioning. Yeah, I guess I'm going to get to that. Remind me if I don't. Okay.
Okay.
I do need to talk about that. All right, let's go to another slide here. And this is one I took at Amelia a couple of years ago, and it surprised me a bit. I didn't notice this when I was there, but I was going back and looking at the pictures. Look at the hood gaps on this car. And this is a really nice and a nicely restored 300 SL. And the hood gaps really are not consistent. And I thought, gee, maybe it's just because of where I was standing. And there was another one beside him that I took the same picture of, and it did not look like this. So even on a really expensive, nicely restored car, you can find issues with body gaps. When they come from the factory, they're really, really good. And it's very hard to replicate in a restoration, the body gaps. And so this one, it's a hood alignment issue. It's under gaps, doors, hood, deck lid. It's at 2 points max, and I'd probably take off a quarter for this. All right, let's look at this 107. Notice that this one has a pinstripe. So I would say this is where I was going to get the pinstripes, probably a quarter. I've already had that discussion. Wheels and wheel covers. Now this one has the wrong color, wheel color over here. It doesn't match the body color. There's only 1 point in there for wheels and wheel covers, and so I'd probably take off a quarter for that. And the other point I want to make on this one, and this is a consistency point. Now notice the antenna. You may not be able to resolve it on your monitor, but the antenna is up and it's bent. It's a slight bend right here. Now, this is a unique 107. Most 107s, especially the later ones, have a power antenna that's located back here. This is a manual antenna 107, one of the few I've seen. If you're going to judge this car with the antenna up and take off for the bend in the antenna, you need to judge every other car in the class with the antenna up. And they're all going to be powered down, and the antenna is going to be down. And so my recommendation, if you have a line of 107s, one of which has a manual antenna, don't judge the antenna, or make them all put the antennas up. So I would probably not judge the antenna. But I make that point for consistency. And consistency is really important in what we're doing. Be consistent. Also, note the top is down. We judge these cars with the top up. So if you walk up to a car that you're going to judge and the top is down, you have to ask them to put the top up. It is also acceptable in Mercedes Concours, by the way, to judge these cars with the hard top on instead of the soft top on and up. Okay, speaking of soft tops, the Mercedes original OEM soft top with the soft plastic glass rear windows has an embossed mark in it. Note this one has the Mercedes seal, and this should be similar, but each of the plastic windows has this mark in it, and that tells you that it's an OEM top. What you very often see in judging is a very good looking top that looks like it has the right fabric, but doesn't have this embossed mark in the side windows. So that tells you it's not an OEM top. Now, how do you score it? So let's look at paint and coach work on our score sheet. And we have on the score sheet, roof including soft top, and there's only 2 points in there. And so of that 2 points, 1 point's originality, 1 point's condition. Assuming a very good condition, then you only have 1 point to deal with on originality. Now, if the fabric looks like it's the correct fabric, then you're only dealing with the windows. And the windows are maybe, what, a third of the top? And so, you might want to take off a third of a point, but, we don't do a third of points. We either do halves or quarters. And so I'd suggest maybe a 1/4 point. You might justify a 1/2 point for it. I'd probably go to a 1/4 point. And this may not be such a bad place for the chief judge to say something in advance, because in almost every 107 class, you'll see this issue, that one of them will have a non-original top that looks pretty good, except the tipper is this mark in the window glass. So
Yeah,
maybe,
this one falls into the same category as those pinstriping, because if all of the cars, right, if all the cars have had their soft tops replaced, they're not going to have this OEM mark on them.
yeah, if they're all the same, then it's immaterial whether you take a 1/4 off on all of them or take nothing off all of them, because the ranking of finish is going to be the same. But you've got to be consistent, and you've got to use our scoring methodology for this. All right, let's do this little challenging one. This is a hard one to take a picture of, and it's actually hard to see. You have to get where you can shine light on the side of the car and see if there's any imperfections in the side of the car. And this shows where my cursor is. There's a door ding here, and there's a door ding here. And most cars in street class are going to have some door dings. So where do you put that? I'd probably put that under quality of body work, and that is a 3-point area. There's a couple of door dings here. Maybe you take a couple 1/4 point deductions, but my point I want to make on this is you can't just blindly say, I'm going to take a 1/4 point off for every door ding. I didn't show you the rest of this car. This car probably has between 10 and 20 door dings on it. It's got a lot. It's been a daily driver for a while. It's got door dings everywhere. You can't just blindly do that, because you'd end up taking more than 3 points off just on door dings, but you're evaluating all of the quality of body work. And so you've always got to deduct the points in proportion to the amount of points allocated in that area. And so I might not deduct more than maybe 2 deductions of a 1/4, even for something that had lots of door dings. And this will come up again when we talk about stone chips in the front of a car. You could deduct all the points on stone chips on that area, but you shouldn't. That wouldn't be the right thing to do. All right, let's shift over to chassis. And after chassis, we'll probably take a break. Okay, on chassis, there's only 8 points in chassis, and you're looking at what the finish looks like on the bottom of the car, the suspension springs, spring color codes, the condition of the shocks, where there's leaks, what the drive shafts look like, the flex discs, if you can see them. And honestly, there's almost no cars that you're going to see the flex discs because of the way they're configured. You will probably be able to see the exhaust system. You can see the donuts, whether the support rubber donuts are cracked or not. And you can certainly see the wheel wells in the oil and fluid leaks, of course. Mercedes undercoating is not black. It's usually a grayish undercoating, and some of the cars are body colored. And so if you see that sprayed black stuff, it's usually somebody that's taken a shortcut in the way it's finished. So let me show you spring color codes. This is something, if you're not used to seeing this, it'll look a little weird the first time you see it. But most Mercedes springs will have some type of color codes with a big mark fairly low, and then a couple of lighter marks, smaller marks a little higher up. The big mark on the bottom is a spring length indication that's put on by Mercedes, and the other marks in the middle are marks that are put on by the spring manufacturer, and Mercedes doesn't talk about their meaning. But you should expect to see these paint marks. Don't deduct for them. It's normal to have those. Okay. And we've been going about an hour now. I think I want to go ahead and just take a short break, maybe 5 minutes or so, and then come back to right here, if that's okay with everybody.
We do have one question that maybe
okay
before you go on. That's what deduction would you use for a stainless steel exhaust system on an earlier car?
For stainless steel, well, you got to make sure it's really a car that doesn't have stainless steel exhaust. I mean, if you look at the AMG cars, an awful lot of them have stainless steel exhaust. So make sure you're right. And if you don't know for certain, give the contestant the benefit of the doubt. But you're in the show class sheet under chassis, and there's only 1 point in there for exhaust system anyway. So if you're sure it's not supposed to have stainless exhaust, and you're taking that 1 point, you're splitting it between condition and originality. So you only have a half a point to play with on originality. So maybe I'd take off a quarter point. That is something that's pretty easy to see, though. You can probably see that on all the cars. Okay, good question. Any other questions?
Yeah, a couple people have asked about slides in the rule book, and after this session, we'll send those links out. Okay.
Yeah, we'll put the slides out for you, and the rule book is just available for download on the
National.
MBCA website. You have to log in to see it, but it's under resources, and it's a 2012 rule book, so it's getting a little bit outmoded. What you see is the score sheets that are posted on the website are actually the scores, pretty much score sheets we're showing you. The score sheets that are in the rule book may not actually be these score sheets.
Right.
So take that with a grain of salt. Okay, let's take a short break then. I'll come back in 5 minutes or less. Like, see you in a little bit. Okay, so it looks like it's time to get going again. And I had a couple of questions that I wanted to address before going on. One had to do with the yellowing of white walls, and how would you address that? And I point out that either having white walls or not having white walls is immaterial. We don't give you extra points or deduct points for having or not having white walls. And that's specifically in the rule book. You're not judging the tires unless you're in the show class. You note it shows up in chassis and underbody tires, and it doesn't show up anywhere on the score sheet if you're in street class. So I'll point that out. I think I would look at the condition of the tires, and I'm more concerned about whether I see cracks in the tires or something like that than I am whether the white walls have turned a little bit yellow. And also, if you have cars in the class that don't have white walls, they won't have the issue of yellowing versus the cars that have some white walls where the owners decided to put white walls and they've yellowed. So I'd kind of probably ignore it myself, and I'd be more concerned about the cracks in the tires if they're present, just on a consistency basis. The chrome wheels, and I don't think I put a slide on chrome wheels in here. Mercedes generally do not come with chrome wheels, and the German DIN requirements generally do not allow chrome wheels on cars because of the reflectivity and the thought that they'll blind people. And so generally chrome wheels are incorrect on a Mercedes, and that means that you're taking off for them under paint and coachwork, under wheels and wheel covers. You only have a 1 point to play with there, so that's probably a quarter point deduction. Now, I'll point out that the Maybach, that there is a chrome wheel option on the Maybach spec sheet, and so there are some exceptions to that chrome wheel rule. There are some Mercedes that actually came with chrome wheels. If in doubt, give the entrant the benefit of the doubt. The other thing I wanted to mention, since we asked that stainless steel exhaust question on an earlier car that wasn't built with a stainless steel exhaust, you could easily get into the damned if you do, damned if you don't situation if you own that car and you put stainless steel exhaust on it. I mentioned taking off perhaps a quarter point for having an inauthentic exhaust, but then by the same token, if you have an original exhaust that isn't stainless, you will probably have some type of corrosion visible on the exhaust, and you might get a quarter point off for the corrosion on the exhaust. So, that's what I mean, the damned if you do, damned if you don't aspect of that.
Yeah, and Nancy asked that same kind of question, Gary. She says, so many OEM parts are now becoming in LA, which I'm assuming means not available, right?
Right.
What happens when OEM parts are in LA because of OEM parts because currently non-OEM parts are currently a deduction?
Well, for the places where you can actually see it, there's a lot of places where you can't really tell if it's an OEM part or not. If it's a non-OEM part, then it gets deducted for. But think about that. If they're really not available, then in the entire class of cars, they're probably all going to have the non-OEM part, and so they're all going to get the same scoring because of it, and it's not a negative on anyone. But You know, that really is a challenge for some aspects of the Mercedes. Fortunately, in a lot of places you can't see it either. Okay, let's go on then to glass lights, rubber, and chrome trim. Yeah, this is a pretty big area. The things you might see are the plastic grills that get discolored or chipped. I've got one of those. Cracked headlight doors. And when I say door is the term for that plastic surround on a lot of our headlights. Not being fitted correctly. I mentioned European headlights in street class. That's okay. In show class, it's not. It has to be what the car was originally intended for. Headlights matching. You know, sometimes when there's accident damage, you end up replacing one and not the other, and the new one looks a lot better than the old one. Poor fit, cracks in the windshield seal. The rubbers just tend to crack and shrink. Windshield, you know, our windshields typically have a decal on the lower right with a signature on it. Fender lip chrome, there's very few cars that have that. You see a lot of 107s that have that, and it's never correct on 107. Discoloration of any of the trim that gets exposed to the sunlight, they tend to gray out when they showed up as black originally. Overspray for a paint job that wasn't done particularly well. Glue on the seals, cracks in the door seals. Light fit. Taillight lenses, the plastic lenses tend to get cracks in them, and sometimes they tend to, the color kind of washes out a little bit. Let's see, bumper overriders. Some of the cars are supposed to have bumper overriders. Some of the cars aren't supposed to have bumper overriders. And you really kind of have to know which ones are which. Trunk seal cracks. Antenna installation, you often find the little rubber grommet on the bottom of the antenna installation is either falling apart or omitted. And of course, discoloration of bumper covers. So let's look at a few examples. Okay, this is a very nice 600 with very good fit. You see the body lines here and how everything lines up well. And the other neat thing at 600s is they actually are supposed to have chrome lips on the fenders. You can see it over here. Now this one, this is a 280 SE. It's not supposed to have fender lip chrome. The only cars that have fender lip chrome originally are the 600s, the 1962 to 1967 300 SE, the 56 to 58 300 SC, and the 220S and SE coupes and convertibles. That's it. And you don't see them very much. What you see a lot is 107s with fender lip chrome, and that's not correct. Okay, so let's look at this. This is a Pagoda, and this is an unusual one, and one I grabbed specifically to talk about here. This is a 1970 280 SL. And the first thing you might notice is the wheels. 1970 was the first year that these wheels were available as an option. So having these wheels on a 1970 car is okay. But there's something else unusual about this car. Now, this is a US spec car. However, it's got the side markers omitted, and it's got the bumper guards omitted. The US car will have rear bumper guards and will have side markers. So how do you score that? Okay, well, let's look at the score sheet. We have, remember, we're under glass lights, rubber, and trim. There's a 20-point max in that area. And so look at headlights, signaling, fog lights, 2 points max. Okay, so the side markers are gone. I'd say maybe a quarter on authenticity there. But let's look at the rear bumper and guards. Rear bumper and guards is a 2-point area. And so, you know, maybe it's a point for bumper and a point for guards. The guards aren't there. And so you can't really square their condition. And there's kind of an authenticity problem there. So I'd probably take off a point for that. And that seems pretty big, but that's kind of where the score sheet puts you on that one, I think. And look at the roof on this one. The soft top looks like a soft top that has been stored down forever. And it's all wrinkly, and the back window is really kind of fogged up. It's really, compared to the quality of the car, the top doesn't look very good. And so what would you do with that one? Well, if you look, roof including soft top, 2 points max. One's for authenticity, one's for condition. I can't really tell. It's probably an authentic top, but it's wrinkled, it's crinkled, the wind is fogged. You know, how much do you take off for that? Maybe, 2 deductions of a quarter, something like that on condition, something like that. So that's an unusual one, and that's why I wanted to show this one to you. Okay, how about this one? Okay, so this is it's like SLC. Now, this car has European headlights. And how do you know it's not a European car? Well, note the big US bumper here. Okay, so this is okay in street class to have European headlights. It's not okay in show class. If you're in show class, then how much do you take off? So you're under glass lights, rubber trim, headlights, signaling, fog lights, total of 2 points. So, that's spread across the headlights, the signaling lights, and the fog lights. So, maybe it's a quarter point for authenticity on the headlights. Look also at the hood gap.
Hey,
Not-
Gary, let's
Yeah.
let's address this issue here about the Euro headlight conversion on these 107s or on these cars, on North
Okay.
American cars.
Well, the rules are, if you're in show class, then you're supposed to have the headlights that were originally installed on a car, which means if it's a US car and you're in show class, and it's supposed to have US headlights and US bumpers. And if it's a European car in show class, it's supposed to have European headlights and European bumpers. Now, if you're in street class, it's okay to have the other European headlights.
Yeah.
Okay.
But to the point I think we talked about, all these cars now, all these 107s are all 25 years old now.
Yeah, so they ought to all be in show class.
They ought to, but
Okay.
owners can opt to put them in street class, and the section that's holding the concours may decide whether or not they're going to put them in street class or not.
Yeah. Okay. But that's an interesting one. Yeah. And that's why I specifically grabbed this car to show it. The other thing I'll point out on this car, although I'm not standing directly in front of this one for the picture, look at the hood gap. Hood gaps from Mercedes are perfect, and that hood gap doesn't look right to me. It looks bigger in the front than it does in the back. Now, to make sure, I would walk to the other side of the car and look at the other side. Usually, if you see a hood gap this big on one side of the car, you're going to see correspondingly a small hood gap on the other side. But I think this car has a hood gap problem. And so that's over under paint and coachwork. That's not the area that I was talking about here. But since if you were judging paint and coachwork, you might take a quarter point off for that. If you're judging glass, lights, rubber, and trim, you totally ignore it. Okay, this one is one with a grill that looks a little odd. This piece in here is normally brighter. It's typically kind of chromish, and it looks like somebody's either painted it or put an aftermarket grill on it. So how would we score that? Okay, so we're under glass, lights, rubber trim, and we're in grill, front bumper, guards, emblem. That's a total of 4 points, and there's a lot of stuff that 4 points is spread out over. And so that's probably an authenticity issue. It's probably an aftermarket grill that isn't correct for the car. But those 4 points are spread across grill, front bumper, guards, emblem. So maybe that's a point for each of those. And so you really only have a half a point to play with on originality on that. So, maybe it's a half a point off for originality. What if it's a original grill that someone's painted over that brighter chrome piece? Maybe I'd take off for originality anyway, or maybe I'd take off for condition, but I'd still probably take a half point off for that. And when you get used to these cars, you look at it and says, that doesn't look right. But if you're not used to it, you may not pick that up. But if you're judging a line of 107s, this one's going to look different, and that'll be what keys you. Okay. My favorite place, the engine compartment. And there's a lot of things to look at in the engine compartment. It's still only a 25-point section, and everything's either 1 point or 2 points. But you often see, paint chips, dirt, corrosion in the radiator, fan clutch, especially rust on the bolts, corrosion on the water pump, fan belts that look like gates or something like that, fuel stains in the intake manifold, Every 107 I've ever seen has had corrosion on the exhaust manifold. Brake booster corrosion. What you see there is when there's been a leak from the master cylinder, it drips down on the brake booster under the master cylinder and it takes the paint off. And so you very often see that. Engine block or engine block color, air filter paint, chipping, wing nuts, rusty clamps, missing pieces. Battery. See this a lot. A different battery, non-correct battery, non-OEM battery, hold downs that aren't correct, ignition wires that are not correct. And that actually stands out more than you think when you see it. I've got a picture later on of that. Corrosion or fuel stains on the carburetor, collapsed engine mounts if you can see it. Most cars you'll never see that. Firewall grommets, I've got a picture of one of those. Very often on the older cars, the over polishing of the aluminum and metal finishes is something that you see. I mean, most of the cars do not have highly polished aluminum. So if you see it really, really shiny, it's usually not correct. Hood pad poorly replaced, hanging, pieces falling off, or blue marks that are visible, and yellow cad finish that has either worn off or hasn't been replicated properly. So let's go to some pictures and discuss it. Oh, a few other odds and ends. Hose clamps a lot. Mercedes uses unique hose clamps. We call the clamps that you see on American cars Yankee clamps, and they do more damage to the hoses. So Mercedes has a special closed hose clamp that you will see. The black painted components of the engine compartment are typically not a gloss, and they're not a flat. They're kind of a semi-gloss paint. And what I often see is very shiny black painted components of the engine compartment, which is not correct on most of the cars.
Yeah, Gary,
Yes.
Amy asks a great question right here. How do you confirm the correct engine block color?
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that one. I've never seen that. But it would be, most of the Mercedes engine blocks are very benign in color. And I think that's for the folks that paint the engine block red or blue or something like that. It'll probably stand out to you. Eric, do you have any guidance on that one? That's something I've never seen. But, honestly, I just say if it doesn't stand out to you, you're probably not going to notice that one unless you're an expert in that particular category of car. So.
Okay, let's see. We have a couple other questions here. So
Okay.
a couple of them we'll hold. We're going to hold off on the battery question because I'm going to cover that.
Yeah, I've got more battery stuff here coming up.
Yeah, and I think this is a good one here. Suppose on a 113 car, someone has a brake fluid reservoir, which is original, and someone else has a new Mercedes replacement. Do you score them the same?
If it's the original correct Mercedes part, what you're likely to see is a yellowed brake fluid reservoir on the old one, and the new one will be white looking. Now, when the car was delivered from the factory, it had a white looking brake fluid reservoir. And so I would probably score the yellowed one as maybe a 1/4 point, and the original looking one, which is going to be correct, would not get a deduction. You see that also on coolant reservoirs. And I've got an example of that coming up. The coolant reservoirs on the cars tended to yellow with time. When they came from the factory, they weren't yellow. They were generally white. And so, a yellowed one would receive an appropriate deduction. Other questions?
Yeah, let's hear. Well, that was an exterior question. I got it answered. No, I think we're good. Go on.
Okay, good. Yeah, I don't have a chat window up that I can see, so I'm glad you're telling me about this. Okay, so the finish on the inner fenders, liners, Mercedes engine compartments are generally painted the same color as the rest of the car because they were done at the same time. When people do a paint color change on a car, if they're being a little lazy, sometimes they paint the engine compartment black. And most Mercedes do not have black engine compartments, so watch for that. Ignition coils.
Yep. Oh, here's a question. While you're in the engine compartment about stickers, missing or added?
Yeah,
That was
I've
a
got a
tough
couple,
one. That's a tough
I've,
one.
I've got a couple examples in here on stickers, and we expect the stickers to be as it was delivered from the factory. And, sometimes you don't know how, what that really looked like. And sometimes you do. If there's a question, first, give the benefit of the doubt to the entrant. Two, ask the chief judge. But there's some that are not correct. I've got an example in here of a K&N air filter sticker on the engine compartment. And it didn't come from the factory with that. And I've also got an example in here where it's got the correct sticker about warning people about getting shocked on the electrical system. But we expect the stickers to be correct, and you can typically buy reproduction stickers that you can put on the car. So there's no reason to think that they would not be correct. It's also a little unreasonable to think that your general judge is going to know what all the stickers ought to be on those cars too. Okay, hope I answered that one for you.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, paint and plating, tears, abrasion, the wiring harness. There's certain Mercedes where the wiring harness just falls apart. The 93 to 95 cars all have that issue. And if you're looking at one of those, you might actually see that without even touching it, and you're not supposed to touch it. Hood springs are generally painted the same color as the car. If they've been replaced, they probably won't be. Now let's go to a few examples. Okay, these are the correct hose clamps. Notice these are closed hose clamps here. They do not have openings in them. If you contrast that with this is what we call a Yankee clamp. It's what you see on American cars, and it kind of damages the hose. See how the hose kind of extrudes out between these things? These are not correct for Mercedes. And it's not unusual to see an incorrect hose clamp on the cars. Notice this polish in here. You almost never see a Mercedes that comes with polish like that. So it's usually somebody that's taken one of the original parts and then polished and over polished it. And that is a deduction because it did not come from the factory that way. I also want to point out the yellow cad plating. I've got a couple other examples of that in here. This is a cadmium plating that's for corrosion resistance, and it kind of looks yellowish. It wears off after a while, and it can be redone. Sometimes when it's redone, it looks more like gold paint than yellow cad plating, and that's not correct. But you'll see that in many Mercedes engine compartments, and most of them are good with a little bit of wear on them. Some other things to look for: if you see a radiator cap that looks like that, it's never correct. Okay, and there's some corrosion on the top of this radiator as well. This is a good clamp and a good belt. Look at the corrosion on this hose clamp and the corrosion on this manifold, and more Yankee clamps here in this drawing, and a little bit of corrosion on this clamp. Okay, so that's kind of the detail things that you're looking at. If a crane ignition is an aftermarket ignition, it's a good ignition and it's appropriate to backfit some of these cars. Folks that do this for Concours, they'll usually hide it someplace where you can't actually see it. And so that's a deduction because it's something that did not come from the factory that way. And here's a brake fluid reservoir that's discolored. There's a dented air filter, air induction pipe here, corrosion around here. There's even some Yankee clamps here. I mean, there's a lot to look at in this picture. Now let's go over to the battery here. Okay, this is an incorrect battery for any car because die-hard was never something that Mercedes came with. I think this is a 190 SL. And I've got some pictures in here on the next slide of what a correct 190 SL battery actually looks like. Notice also there's a K&N filter logo over here that's not supposed to be there. And look at the cracks in this grommet in the flywheel. That's in that flywheel in the firewall. Okay, let's talk batteries a little bit. Battery is supposed to be correct OEM battery for the car. Now, for a 190 SL car in cars that are built in the 50s, this is a picture of what the battery originally looked like for those cars. And it's a very unique look. For those of you who may not be aware, a lead acid battery is used in a car, a lead acid battery cell makes about 2 volts. And so you need 6 of them to come up to 12 volts, and they're connected in series. And in these really old batteries, the intercell connections are done on the top of the battery. There's actually, these are lead pieces that connect the cells together, and they're exposed. And there's also caps to see the amount of electrolyte. And there's only 3 battery manufacturers for the old Mercedes. There's Varda, which is what this one is and what the one at the bottom is. Varda and Hopfinger and Bosch was one of the later manufacturers. We did not see Mercedes-Benz branded batteries until the 70s. And so contrast this, which is the 190 SL battery, with this, which is in the Pagoda, the model after the 190 SL. This is a picture of a 250 SL in its original picture. You can see by the fading on it. Okay, so this is a Varda battery. We no longer have exposed intercell connectors. We do have caps that screw off to get to the electrolyte. And so this is kind of what you ought to see on a Pagoda or kind of a late 60s, early 70s version car. Now you can actually buy these stickers. So you could perhaps even buy a current black looking battery and stick the sticker on it. And they actually sell tops that look like this. And you could actually put that on it, and you as a judge would probably never even know that it's not original. But that's what the 190 SL is supposed to look like. This is what a Pagoda is supposed to look like. Okay.
Yeah, we've got a quote. I get maybe a comment or from Jordan about a period correct battery that was depleted but inserted for visual purposes with stickers, etc. I'm not sure I understand the Japanese battery, i.e. a Japanese battery with Japanese stickers on it for a 124. I don't think you would ever see.
In 124, you would expect the 124 to be shown with a Mercedes battery.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
And something other than a Mercedes battery would not be correct for that, and it would probably be a 1/4 point deduction.
Mhm.
I hope I answered that question. All right, let's go to a few other engine compartment things. Just some pictures of things you might see. Now, this has corrosion. It's actually caulking extruded out here. You know it did not come from the factory with that caulking all over the place. And that almost looks like RTV, which has no place in an engine. And corrosion on the bolts. Over here, there's a pool of oil building up on this breather here. That's kind of a problem. And the finish originally is not this shiny on this valve cover. So that's probably a deduction then for over polishing the metal. Over here, you see a little CAD plating on these pieces, which looks pretty good. And this hose looks pretty good. And it's basically, this is kind of the correct look. And these plug wires really stand out. I mean, blue is not a color that Mercedes has used on the plug wires. And I bet if you even read these words, it'll say something like import direct on them or something like that. And if you look down, this is kind of looking down behind the fan, and the bolts that are holding the fan onto the pulley, or the pulley onto the hub, are rusty. And you'll see this pretty often. All right, let's do a little scoring on engine compartments. And what I have here, the next 2 slides are the same year of 560 SL. All right, let's look at this engine compartment. And you look around, there's not a lot to take off for in this engine compartment. As you look, I mentioned discolored coolant reservoirs. This is a discolored coolant reservoir. They'll all get like this after a while, but it is a deduction. And so you look at the engine compartment list, cooling system, the first thing on the list, it's 2 points. And that's probably a 1/4 point for discolored coolant reservoir. And looking through the rest of the engine compartment, it's really a good engine compartment. It's got this nice sticker here that's supposed to be there. But the only other thing I see in here is that, look at the brake fluid reservoir. It's actually the right color. Thank you, more coffee. It's the right color. So it hadn't really yellowed very much, but look at the color of the brake fluid in it. The brake fluid's black. And brake fluid is normally a transparent amber color. And Mercedes requires you to change the brake fluid on all the cars at least every 2 years. So that's a deficiency. How much do you take off? Well, the braking system for the engine compartment's 2 points max, so I'd probably take off a quarter for that. And of the things that you look at in here, brake fluid that's old is one of the things that will be most damaging to the car that you would see on a concours. So I'd certainly encourage people to change their brake fluid. Now let's shift to these same.
Can we just take a break here for a couple questions? One is about Cosmoline. Should it be removed?
No, came from the car came with Cosmoline protecting the finish, and so you expect the car to be shown as it was in its original factory, as it came from the factory. So if it's still there, don't remove it.
Yeah, and we had another sticker questions about, cars that their AC has been converted to R34. A lot of times they have a conversion sticker under the hood. I mean,
Yep. They were required by law to have that conversion sticker on it, and I'd take off for it. Why would I take off for it? Because it's supposed to have R12. And so a conversion of 134, which is actually pretty apparent because of the way the caps are as well, is in my mind a quarter point deduction. And I wouldn't take off another quarter point for the sticker. I just probably take off a quarter for the conversion.
Let's see here. Steve asked about Chapman, green wires in the upper right. And I think your question is OE question. I think that should be a question mark.
I think they're correct. And I say that. Let's flip to the next car.
Okay.
Notice this car actually has the same green wire in the same place. Now this car is in nowhere near as good a condition, but I think that's probably correct. And so I didn't take off for it.
Yeah.
And this is one where give the contestant or the entrant the benefit of the doubt. You might ask the entrant what it's for. I don't know what it's for, and most entrants probably won't know what it's for. But unless you're certain, I wouldn't take off for it. And I think it's probably supposed to be there.
Yeah. And I think this is a really good question. Jim Jones asked about, do you judge differently for engine compartment leak, rust, or et cetera, if the car is driven regularly, including to a show versus a trailered only car? So I think his question is, do you judge a street car versus a show car slightly differently because of street cars should typically driven regularly?
Well, I mean, the answer to that is really no, in that the score sheet is exactly the same in both the street and the show class for engine compartment. But that'll all come out in the wash. I mean, if you're in street class and against other street cars that have been driven regularly, they'll all pretty much look the same way. But there's a penalty for trailering it in street class as well. And one of the exclusions that you make is you don't typically take off for something that happened on the way to the show. And, maybe you could make a case that some of the dirt that is there only showed up for the drive, and maybe you want to exclude that. But if you're going to do that, do it for every car that you're judging.
Yeah. And Brad, I'm not sure if I understand your question. He says, deduct for street class W134A. Maybe you want to unmute and clarify your question. I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, you talked about the conversions, and we're talking about street class cars. I can understand maybe for a concours class or show class, but street class, if you're using the car every day and you've had to have the conversion done because you can't get the old gas, the old
refrigerant, right?
Yeah, refrigerant. Sorry, thank you. I mean, why would we deduct? I mean, you say you don't deduct for Euro headlights on a street class car, but then you deduct for a different type of refrigerant.
Well, it wasn't the refrigerant, it was the sticker.
Well, and Brad, to just answer that question, the rule book specifically makes an exception for Euro headlights in street class as a acceptable thing. But there's nothing in the rule book about the conversion to R134. And I asked Pete that question last year when I prepared to give this course, and really kind of got the calibration from him that it's okay to take off a quarter point for that conversion. Now, let me put on my tech session hat from my concours hat. I never convert cars to R134. If I have an R12 car, I will always leave it as an R12 car. And I've got 10 cans of R12 downstairs. You can get R12. R12 cools better than R134. R134 systems are sized differently than R12 systems because the specific performance of the BTU per pound mass that R134 will take off is not as good as what R12 will do. And so the AC system will never perform as well with R134 as it will with R12. So I never convert cars. And there's no real reason to convert them. You can buy R12. I buy R12. And you can charge R12. And so, yeah, it's not the way it was delivered. So I take off a quarter point for it. Quarter point's not very much, but anyway. Okay, let me take my session hat back off and put my Concours. But I appear to be back. I guess somebody didn't like what I said about R134. So now, do I need to screen share again? Or can
Yeah, you'll have to screen share again.
Okay. I'm out of the share screen and screen 2 and share. Okay, what are you seeing? You're seeing a slide of a 5/16 compartment?
Yep, slide of the year one of the red 5/16.
Okay. All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, this is exactly the same year of car. There's more going on in this engine compartment. All right, let's go through this. And this is where it's really useful to just take your score sheet and go down it in order. Cooling system. All right, there's 2 points max in the cooling system. So I've got a yellowed reservoir. Okay, so maybe a quarter point. And you probably can't read this, but the sticker on the radiator says like AJ Auto, like Springfield, Massachusetts, or something like that. It's certainly not an original sticker. It shows the radiator's been replaced. So I'd probably do a quarter point on that. HVAC system, there's 2 points max in there. And this is the real reason I grabbed this picture. Look at this back here. Instead of a monovalve for controlling temperature of the heating system, there is a brass plumbing valve here that people are either turning on or off for their heat. That's not original. And so I'd probably take off a half a point on originality for that one. Going down to engine, exhaust manifolds, mounts. We've got scratched cam cover over here, so maybe a quarter point on that. The braking system, again, black brake fluids, maybe a quarter point. Notice almost all the paint's gone off the booster. These are normally fully black, and so that's probably a quarter point. Underhood body finish. There's some rust down here on the right side of the radiator down there, so maybe a quarter point for that. Under miscellaneous items not covered, and it's useful to know what's not covered. Notice there's no place on this for the air filter or the air induction, and there's an induction pipe missing right here. Okay, so that's missing air intake line, maybe a quarter point. And contrast the finish on this air cleaner with the previous one. The previous one, I'm going to roll back to that slide. This is about how they're supposed to look. And this is really kind of a layer of corrosion on the aluminum. And so that's really an incorrect finish for the air cleaner. And so a quarter point for that. Hose clamps. Note, there's 2 points max on hose clamps. The washer hoses on the hood are disconnected and discolored. And so that's discolored, that's a quarter point. And clamps, hose clamps are rusty. See these hose clamps down in here, how rusty they are? They're the correct clamps, but they're corroded. So maybe a quarter point there. So we're down to dirt, corrosion, and leaks, which is 2 points max. Note the dirt around the power steering pump here, maybe a quarter point. There's corrosion over here on the air conditioning suction line, which is a quarter point. There's probably maybe a fuel stain over here on the cruise control actuator, quarter point. The little bit of the intake manifold that you can see in here has spots of aluminum corrosion on it, so maybe a quarter point. Under horns, wiper linkage, washer reservoir, notice that this cap is kind of yellowed, and those caps are pretty cheap. Maybe a quarter point on that. So there's a lot to look at in this, and when you get a kind of overwhelming engine compartment, it's just very helpful to just kind of go down the list for the scoring sheet and have that focus you on what you're supposed to be looking at, because otherwise this can be pretty overwhelming. Okay. All right, let's go to another one. Another engine compartment. This is a very nice 1957 190 SL. There's not much to deduct on this one. Note the way the light is reflecting off this air cleaner. There's basically stains on the air cleaner here. And so there's no air cleaner on the score sheet. So that's miscellaneous items not covered, maybe a quarter point. But the more interesting point on this car is the battery. This is not the correct battery for a 190 SL. And not only is it not the correct battery for 190 SL, it also doesn't fit right. See where the battery hold down is and how the battery is shorter than the battery hold down is. Now there's 2 points max in the battery and charging system place. And so, I might take off a quarter for 9 OEM battery and another quarter point for the fact that it doesn't fit correctly. Otherwise, this is a really nice engine compartment, and notice the stickers and everything. And notice also the finish here is about right. It's not very shiny. These cars do not have shiny finishes on these parts. Okay, this is also a 190 SL. And if you're judging across this, you might not even notice this, but then you kind of read the label on the carburetor. And this is actually a fairly popular conversion on these cars because the original carburetors were very, very expensive. And if you read this carburetor, it says Mikuni. Now, Mercedes did not use Mikuni carburetors. And so there's a originality issue here. Okay, how do you score it? You're under fuel delivery carbs injection system intake manifold. There's a maximum of 2 points. One is authenticity, one is condition. So we've got non-original carbs, but the manifold, the linkage, the hoses are all original. So, maybe half point, given that the other stuff is still original. And there's also some fuel stains in here, so I might take a quarter point off for that. Okay. And so I mentioned there's some items that aren't on the score sheet. The air cleaner and the induction pipes are not on the score sheet, so I'd use miscellaneous items not covered. Windshield wipers are not on the score sheet when you're looking around for glass, lights, rubber, and trim. And I would probably use windshield seal and trim over there. There's no deduction under belts. For a car that has individual belts, I would probably put a belt deduction under the system. If it's a car with a serpentine belt so that you can't just allocate to a specific system, I'd probably use miscellaneous items not covered. Improper ride height. Sometimes on 107s you see this where the front's higher than the rear. In show class, that's suspension spring shocks. It's not really a good place to put it in street class, but this is not something you see very often anyway. But my point being, and I keep saying this throughout the presentation, be consistent. Above all, be consistent. It's absolutely vital that if you take off for something in one place and you see it on another car, take off the same amount in the same place on the score sheet, to be consistent, to be fair to our entrants. Okay, I got a summary slide here, and this will be the last slide on the prepared presentation. Then we'll break a little bit and have a quiz. So summary, what points am I trying to make in this one, and what are the real learning points here? Well, I've said it many times, be consistent, and note that it's on this slide 3 times. Be consistent in your scoring. It's really important to be consistent. We want Concours to succeed. We want it to be a really viable program in MBCA. We have to have judges, of course. We also have to have entrants, and we want our entrants to enjoy it, and we want them to come back. And a part of that is consistency. A part of that is transparency in the way we judge. Part of it is being pleasant and being welcoming to them, and of course, not grousing about their car where they can hear. Good, consistent, fair judging is absolutely vital to any Mercedes-Benz Concours program. And of course, the rules that we have, the points being split between accuracy and condition, making sure you deduct points in proportion to the maximum points for that area, but being consistent, transparent, pleasant, and welcoming. So what we're going to do now is I'll address any questions that we have, and then we'll take a little break, and then we'll go into the quiz portion. Do we have any other questions?
Well, we do. We have a couple of comments and questions. Gary Simone from our section mentions that he has I think a 450 SL, either 450 or 560 SL. That the trunk, or not the trunk, but the hood underneath is painted car color and not black. And as far as he knows, it's never been repainted, never been in an accident. But I believe it should be black.
I think they've got hood insulation, don't they?
Well, they do, but underneath the hood insulation, it's like black, if I recall my 450.
Trying to look at one of these over here. Yeah, what I'm used to seeing is hood insulation and not seeing a color in there.
Yeah, not paint, not body color in there, right? So,
I really don't know the answer to that question, although I could probably go find a bunch of pictures of 560
Yeah.
SLs. Eric, do you know the answer to that question?
They changed somewhere in the model years, like with the earlier ones, the 72, 73s.
Mhm.
They were black, and then later on, they started insulation. I don't know the answer for the later model ones. I'd have to go look at some of that's why I keep the little sales brochures, because that seems to be the easiest way to find answers.
Okay. Let's see, we've got a couple other questions. I mean, Nancy brings up about having entrants do like a pre-judging section, like a meeting, like, or having I guess a workshop, right, for people who might want to show their cars and, let them, so that they can figure out what they need to fix. And that's a great idea, Nancy. We've done even a detail clinic ahead of time, ahead of the show, to help, instruct people on how to clean their cars. And in that session, we also go over this judging sheet, et cetera. So yeah, if possible, that's a really great idea.
Yeah.
Diana, the other thing is you can bring them to the Cars and Coffee at Halcyon. I'll be happy to look at them. You're usually there too.
Yeah, well, Nancy, I think, is in California.
Oh,
So, we have people for all over the country. Let's see your chat. I think you had a question here.
Let me add in, the National Social Media Committee did also some videos on bringing your car to a concourse. So that might be a useful resource for that.
Yeah, practice session. Let's see where I think I lost. Oh, Chet, let's see here. Chet's question is, for street class, would you deduct for clear film? I'm not sure where you're talking about, what film.
I'm referring to film that you put on the fenders, the hood, the bumper, to protect from stone chips and, that kind of exterior paint protection. Is that clear? Did I make that clear?
Yeah, that would
I
be something
understand.
that it didn't come from the factory that way, right?
Yeah.
But for street class, it might be okay, or
Yeah, personally, I probably wouldn't deduct for it, though. I might ask our chief judge for his ruling on it. What do you think, Eric?
there we go. It's just something that's come up new. We have not deducted on it in the past. If it's put on right, you're probably not going to notice it.
Yeah, I know under PCA rules, it's not something you deduct for, but our rules are a little different from PCA. The other thing is, if there's a deficiency in the clear coat, like it's chipped, you also deduct for that. So.
Well, we haven't deducted for it in the past, and I haven't really. There's only a couple, 3 cars that I know of in the section that actually have it that are older cars. So
Yeah,
it's kind of an expensive ordeal to do.
yeah. I think Roland asked a real good question here. I think that we maybe weren't clear about how do you decide whether a car should be in a street or a show car? I mean, there's some basic rules, but
Well, for show, we expect a car that's over 25 years to really enter the show class, although they would have an option to be in street. But the difference between street and show is really 8 points, and those 8 points go to chassis in show class, and they go to extra points for mileage and for age in the street class. But if you're over 25 years, you really ought to probably be in show.
right, that's kind of our rule. That's pretty, for one thing, we usually have a limited number of cars of that age, so you make a better class. The other thing about cars, just remember that in street class you have these age and mileage differentiate or equalizers. So, all those cars that are 25 years old are going to max out on points. And if they're put with newer cars, that gives them kind of an unfair advantage because they're getting extra points for those ages. So I really try to break up, newer cars from older cars for that reason, particularly in street. Okay, and then Richard, I think Richard Cook asked a question about the cocoa mats or carpet. mats should be taken out of the car. So it should be down to factory floor mats. So we should, if the owners have left them in the car, I'll just ask them, politely to please remove them, and sometimes they want to leave them in because they look better than the carpet underneath. But the rules is that, anything extra should be taken out. The only exception to that is in newer cars, some of the floor mats are clipped down to the floor and they really can't be taken out.
Yeah, I love cocoa mats, but they really didn't come with cocoa mats.
And they did not. Okay, what is your perspective on grill badges? Can it tell the story on the car? Route 66 MBCA badges.
Yeah, the MBCA badges are acceptable in both of the classes. The others are acceptable in street class, but not necessarily show class if it's not an MBCA. And you can also use license plate surrounds in street class, but not in show.
Okay, we see here. Carter Jenkins asked, what about one stage versus two stage paint correct color?
Well, I think I'd have a hard time if it's done properly and looks like an original finish. I'd have a hard time telling the difference. So it would be really hard to say that points would be deducted for it.
Yeah, some of the earlier cars, had lacquer paint and single stage paint, and if they've been repainted even to Concours standards, some people use a two-stage, color clear coat.
Yeah, I just don't think I'd see that. I would pick up on it. I mean, if it's a good smooth finish that has a lot of luster to it, I think it would be the equivalent of a factory. And I don't think I'd be able to see the difference.
Okay, let's see here. Jim, you asked about non-OEM carpet hold down attachments. Well, I mean, generally you have just the factory carpet in there, so they shouldn't have any hold downs unless and then if they're newer cars, I don't know if I'd know the difference between a non-OEM clip versus a Mercedes.
Yeah, I've never seen a non-OEM hold down clip.
Yeah.
Other questions?
So we've got a few people that need to leave before the
Oh no, must hang around for the quiz.
Oh, Steve Chapman asks, how much deduction for tinted windows?
Well, you've got to pick up that it's tinted. If you've got a line of cars and one of them is noticeably darker than the next, you're probably going to pick up on the tinted windows. But you're over in the score sheet under glass, lights, rubber, and trim, and you'd be window, side, and rear seats and seals and trim. So there's only 2 points in there, and one originality, one condition. That's an originality issue. So I don't think it would be more than about a quarter point.
And Carter Jenkins asks, this is a good question. Are you going to cover the preservation class scoring real quickly?
No, I actually wasn't, but Eric knows that a lot better than I do, and I did not prep for that. So if Eric would want to talk a little bit about Silver Star preservation, if folks want to hear about that, maybe you could cover that one.
Well, Silver Star preservation is pretty simple. It's originality. We had, do you remember the one, was it like at a 55 Cabrio that came in one day that he got pulled out of a garage that he managed to get running? And when you go down through the list, it wasn't a great looker, but it was all original. It all ran and the turn signals worked. So he passed.
Yep.
People come in and put it in two different classes. They'll come in and put it in show class as well as want their Silver Star if they haven't done it before. Those cars tend to do pretty well. Again, the only thing that I tell people is you take, like you were talking about, you take out the mats, you take anything off the car that was not original to begin with, like your seat covers and all those types of things. And I don't think we've had but one car in the 10 years that I've been doing that didn't pass the preservation class.
Yeah, and I make a case that it could add to the car's value too, having the Silver Star Preservation Award.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people do like it. People like getting that emblem. I know I have it for my car. I like having it on, the grill in the front, so.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, I see them popping in, but I don't have a chat window up. Let me get.
Yeah, it's just some comments here in the chat window. So maybe we want to take maybe a a 5-minute break and then come back and do the quiz and
Okay.
call it a day.
All right, let's take a, what do you say, 5-minute break? Okay,
Yeah.
5-minute break, and we'll be back in a little bit and then do the quiz.
This is Bernie Long. I was unable to make the chat work.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, maybe what's your question and I'll write it down.
Well, I sent an email to Gary, but
He might not see it.
The modern Firestone Phoenix tire for a 280 SL 113, which is made by Coker, does not fit in the trunk. So I can't get the 5th tire into it's slightly larger than the original. So if I cannot get a 5th Coker into the trunk, with it where it is seated. So we've got installed a Vredstein instead. Am I going to get hit with a deduction for that?
What, for having the old tire in the trunk?
Well, it's not Vredstein. It's a brand new tire.
Well, it's a
And
brand new tire, but it doesn't.
brand new
fit.
Vredstein.
Can you,
Because
is it,
I can't get a Phoenix, with the curb guard on it.
well, we don't really judge that spare tire. Okay.
Okay.
So if it's under, we're now, if I recall, the Pagoda spare tire is underneath that rubber mat, right?
No, it's,
Is
no,
it exposed?
It's on the right-hand side and it's covered with a cover, but it's sits up and it's on the right-hand side.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
not normally going to ask you to pull your covers or disassemble
No.
the car to see things. So if it's not normally visible from opening the trunk, then we're probably not going to ask to see it.
right.
Okay, that's
Exactly.
cool. Where can I
Yeah.
get an OEM battery? We tried, Classic said they can't send one.
Which
because
car?
of Government rules. I'm
Pagoda,
sorry?
Pagoda.
Pagoda.
Pagoda, yeah. I had to replace the battery that was put in by the restorer. And it's a big
You-
piece of crap battery.
Have you asked your local dealer?
Yeah, and they don't have it.
Yeah.
They'd have
The-
to go to the local store and buy one.
Well, I think the trick on that, since, the Pagodas didn't come with Mercedes-Benz branded batteries anyway. I mean, they were all either Bosch or Varda or Hoppelfinger. And I think the trick is probably to get a battery that has a black case and buy the Hoppelfinger or Bosch or Varda stickers and then get a cover. I think you can probably buy a cover to go over the battery that has those things that look like those 6 caps. And because, the original Pagoda battery had screw off 6 removable caps so you could check the electrolyte. And there's ways to fake that a Concours judge will never find.
I think that's what my restorer did. So I'm gonna have to then, and that's a good thought. I'm gonna ask him to see if he can get me all that fake stuff or get me another battery, just like
Yeah.
the one we had on.
Yeah, Richard Cook just put into chat. He said he purchased an MB battery from his dealer for his 230 SL. No.
Okay.
Yeah, see, I think the dealers have them. The
Yeah.
Okay.
Classic Center got burned shipping a battery, and so they
Yeah.
don't ship batteries dry anymore. But you can ship a dry battery legally and then just put the electrolyte in it when you
Right.
get it.
But you would think, yeah.
Yeah, Gary,
Okay.
we did, I just chatted to you. We did have, I think, a really good question in chat, and that's the age and mileage
Okay.
points on how they work. And I know that there was a slide on that about just the.
Yeah, I didn't talk a lot about it, but are we all back? Let's see. Yeah, we should be all
We
back
should
now.
all be back, so we should talk
Okay.
about that.
If you look at the street class score sheet at the bottom of the second page, it explains that for model year, you add 1 point per 5 years of age for 4 points max added to your final score. And mileage, it's 1 point for 50,000 miles to 4 points max. It's added to your final score. And of course, deductions are bad and adding is good. So you can potentially get 8 extra points. Or if you have a car that's over 20 years old and has 200,000 miles on it.
Right. Yep.
And
Yeah,
that's
'cause
the
you max
advantage of
out.
street class.
Yeah, you max out.
Okay. Any other questions before we go over to the quiz?
Okay, well, we want everybody to chat their name into the chat window if they can.
Yeah, go ahead and chat your name under the chat window. That's our way of taking attendance for the quiz. Make sure you're really still there.
Yeah.
There's a question in chat about, will this be available on YouTube? Yes, we will put this on our YouTube channel. Give us a little bit of time because it takes a little bit of time to process it and make it ready. But we will have this
Hank
on our
Webb,
YouTube channel. Yeah, just go ahead and chat it.
Yeah, if you can't find the chat window, just unmute and I'll type your name in here. So,
And we know Hank's here.
It's
Yeah.
Bernie Long again. Yeah, my chat does not work.
okay.
Okay.
Bloomberg.
Melinda Lincoln.
okay, good.
Yeah, that's our way of making up the list of who gets the certificates too.
No.
Jay Blumberg.
Open your video.
Paul Sissel.
I gotta get this to everybody.
Jim Beetham.
Paul Sissel.
Okay, Jim.
Rick Hallowell.
Fred Mudge.
Robert Kalustian.
There it is.
Ed Barakia.
They can't hear you if you mute it.
It's non mute.
I'm not-
Hi, Paul Sissel is Cissel.
Okay.
Kimber Paul's is S.
Sorry, I'll get it. Thanks.
You obviously type very quickly.
Yeah, I do. Well, I should look at my list.
Fred Mudge.
Lovely. Hank Webb,
Yeah, I got you, Hank.
okay.
Yeah, oh, yeah, Jean, yeah, I need to, yeah, and if you have more than one person with you, let me know so we can get certificates.
Well, Jean has her own computer.
Ed Barakia.
Own computer, yeah.
I ask you, if you're not actively speaking, then go ahead and mute because we're getting some kind of funny audio things from a few folks not being muted.
Did you get Fred Mudge?
I did get you, Fred. Is your wife with you as well?
Yes, Ann. Yes.
Yeah.
It's Jim Jones here. It does seem to be going in for me.
Okay, I got you, Jim.
Thank you.
And with PowerPoint up here, I can't see if you all are still there. Are you still there?
Yeah, I think everybody's still here, and I think we're about ready. If you're ready to start
Okay.
we can
You-
start the quiz.
You want me to share screen from my side? Oh, didn't
Well,
do it.
not yet, not till we get to the questions, right? Or till we get to the last 10 questions, right? 'Cause
Okay.
the first ones are text.
Okay. So let's explain how we're going to do this quiz. We're going to ask a question, and then in general, the first 10 are verbal or narrative questions with a true, false, or ABCD answer. Then we're going to pop up a little window that allows you to answer. We want you to answer, and then we'll pretty quickly be able to see where the answers are. And then we'll go over what the right answer to the question is. So if you didn't get the answer right, you'll get the immediate calibration and feedback on what the correct answer is. First 10 are kind of narrative / verbal, and the second 10 are scoring cars based on pictures. Okay. All right, everybody ready?
Okay, and I think we should give everybody about a minute to answer these because we've got 20 of them, so we have time to do the explanations.
Okay. And
Quick
how many
question,
people?
how do we answer?
Well, what's gonna happen is you're gonna get a poll up on your screen. It's gonna pop up on your screen and it's gonna give you the choices, and then you can click the choice and hit submit.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you want me to read them out there?
Well, let me put it up on the screen and then you can read it, okay?
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna launch the first question. Okay, there
Okay,
you go.
this-
Everybody should see it.
All right. This is true or false. A Mercedes-Benz Club of America Concours d'Elegance is a competition to see which car is the cleanest. True or false? Please put your answer in there.
And you can move that little poll window around if you click on the little header, and you can drag it left or right. And that'll be important when we get to the ones with pictures.
And we can see pretty quickly whether everybody's answered or not. We got 62 right now.
Mhm. And we have 67, and you and I aren't answering questions.
Yeah. No, we're answering questions. We're just not answering these.
We're just not answering these, right? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so that's just about everybody.
Okay, should I? 64.
Okay, so let us go over the correct answer for this one. And as I tried to make clear in our discussion, a Mercedes-Benz Club of America Concours d'Elegance is not a competition to see which car is cleanest. And so the correct answer is false. I pointed out that there are actually very few points in there for dirt, corrosion, and even leaks. There's only 6 points in the show class and 7 points in the street class. So there's an awful lot more to it than that. It's very much emphasizes condition and originality versus just cleanliness. And that's in contrast to the way some other clubs do it. I am also a PCA concours judge, and you'll find that the PCA rules are very much just cleanliness and no originality at all. And quite honestly, I like the way MBCA does it better. Okay, let's go to the next question. Okay, what is the most important aspect of concours judging? It's a multiple choice. A, not talking with the car owner. B, consistency of judging. C, sticking to your assigned area. D, having fun. So please go ahead and enter your answer. Okay, we're up to 62. That's probably just about everybody. 63. It certainly must be everybody. Okay, so we had one person that selected A and 62 that selected B. And B is the right answer, consistency of judging. And every one of these answers has an aspect to it. So each of them are important, but the consistency of judging is the overriding thing I'm after here. And as I've tried to make very clear in the presentation, consistency is the element of fairness. Fairness is something that we absolutely have to have, one, to get the cars ranked correctly, but also to get people to want to come to our next event. And so consistency in judging is overall exceedingly important. Okay, question 3. If you have a question on the originality of an item on the car, you should pick one. A, guess. B, assume it's not original and deduct points. C, assume it's original and do not deduct points. D, consult with the judging team captain, who may ask the owner, giving the owner the benefit of the doubt. I'm not sure you can see all of D, so let me read D again. Consult with the judging team captain, who may ask the owner, giving the owner the benefit of the doubt. So go ahead and answer. Okay, we have 62 answered. Okay, that's probably enough. Okay, so the result here, we have 4 people that answered C, and we have 58 that answered D. What I'm looking for in here is really D. Consult with the judging team captain, who might ask the owner and give the owner the benefit of the doubt. Now, C is the second best answer. Assume it's original and don't deduct, because we give the entrant the benefit of the doubt if you don't know. But the judging team captain can also consult the chief judge for a ruling, although giving the owner the benefit of the doubt is still appropriate. Okay. All right, let's go to question 4. Okay. All right, question 4. What weight should you give to additional items presented by the owner, such as original window sticker, bill of sale, other memorabilia about the car? Select one of the below answers. A is none. B is extra point added. C is 2 points added. D is consider it, but no specific points.
I don't have the question popping up on my screen. I did all the other ones, but this one hasn't popped up.
This one has not popped up. That's odd. Why would that happen? So what do you think the answer? No, never mind. Don't say anything. We got 63 up. Okay. Looks like we have almost everybody. So what do you think the answer is then? Put you on the spot. Jordan, you're muted. Okay, well, let me go through the answer. So it was, what weight should you give to additional items? And what I see is 53 people said none, and 10 people said consider it, but no specific points. And the correct answer is none. I'm glad no one answered B or C, but we're to give it no weight whatsoever because we're judging the car and not all the other stuff or the neat things the owner may present. And sometimes owners will use that to mask issues about the car too. So you really want to get those things out of the way so they don't get in the way of your judging. All right, let's shift over to question 5. Okay, question 5. What is true about authenticity and condition? Answer 1, condition is everything and authenticity does not matter. 2, authenticity and, that's B, authenticity and condition split the points for that area, each responsible for 50% of the points. I'm not sure you can read all that. C, authenticity accounts for 75% of the points and condition accounts for 25% of the points. D, authenticity accounts for all the points and condition does not matter. Now, I'll read those again because I think some of those are going off the screen for some of you. Actually, if you widen the screen, you can see it all. Okay. A is conditions everything and authenticity does not matter. B is authenticity and condition split the points for the area, each responsible for 50% of the points. C, authenticity accounts for 75% of the points and condition accounts for 25% of the points. And D, authenticity accounts for all the points and condition does not matter. We have 55, 56, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, which I think is everybody. Okay, so we have 1A, we've got 60 Bs, and we got 3 Cs. Okay, and the answer I'm after here is B, authenticity and condition split the points for the area, each responsible for 50% of the points. Okay, and that's true just about everywhere, not necessarily totally true in the paint area, paint and body. All right, let's go to 6. All right, question 6. You are the interior judge and you note an obvious issue for which points should be deducted in the engine compartment. You should tell the engine compartment judge immediately. B, ignore it. C, ask your judging team captain to point it out to the engine compartment judge. D, tell the entrant. Okay, A was tell the engine compartment judge immediately. B is ignore it. C is ask your judging team captain to point it out to the engine compartment judge. And D is tell the entrant. Okay, 65, 61, 62, 63, 64. Okay, so we got 64 answers. We've got 53 Bs and 11 Cs. And the answer I'm after is B, ignore it. And this is an issue about consistency in judging. You want the same persons to do the same parts of the car. And that's why it's important to focus on your area and let the judge for the other area worry about that area. Don't worry about anything outside your purview. Depending on the circumstances, after all the judging is over, you might want to point out to the entrant, but not during the judging. Okay, let's go to 7. Okay, number 7. This is sort of a nightmare scenario. You're judging the 3rd car in a 6-car class. You see a piece of debris under the passenger seat. You did not look under the passenger seat in the first 2 cars. You should. Deduct a quarter point for it. B, deduct a quarter point for it and rejudge the previous 2 cars, making sure you look under the seat. C, deduct no points. D, remove it and give it to the owner. Deduct no points. Okay, so you're judging the 3rd car in a 6-car class. You see a piece of debris under the passenger seat. You didn't look under the passenger seat in the first 2 cars. What do? A, deduct a quarter point for it. B, deduct a quarter point for it and rejudge previous 2 cars, making sure you look under the seat. C, deduct no points. And D, remove it and give it to the owner. Deduct no points. So we're up to 61. 61.
Yeah, I think we lost a couple of people.
Yeah, I heard a little ding there. Oh, we're up to 63. Okay, so let's look at our answers. We've got 3 people with A, we have 1 person with B, and we've got 59 people with C. The answer I'm looking for is C. And this is another part of fundamental to consistency in judging. If you didn't look at something in the previous cars, don't take off for it in the later cars. Also, you really don't want to remove it and give it to the entrant. That's really kind of borderline insulting and condescending. And we kind of want him to come back next time. So don't do that. And this is really important. The first car that you judge is really, really important. You've got to be very thorough and you've got to establish the way your stand pattern is and what you're looking at in the first car. Because you can't get to the 10th car and be saying, oh, I didn't look at that. If you didn't look at it in the first 10 cars, you don't look at it in the next 10 either. Very important for consistency in judging. Okay, let's go to number 8. Number 8, if in doubt about whether to take points off, A, err on the side of the entrant. B, take the points off. Okay, so if in doubt about whether to take points off, A, err on the side of the entrant. B, take the points off. Okay, so we already have 63 answered. So of course, what we're after here, we have got 61 people that said A and 2 that said B. What we're after is err on the side of the entrant. Remember, we want these people to come back and we need them to perceive that we're being fair. And so we really don't want to make an error and be incorrect about it. So if in doubt, favor the entrant. And also, don't go off and be the judge that is just after something to get the person. I mean, that's inappropriate. It's the wrong attitude for our judging. Okay, 9. Question 9. True or false? When taking points off, it is not necessary to annotate the reason for the deduction. True or false? And I'll read it again. True or false? When taking points off, it is not necessary to annotate the reason for the deduction. Okay, we've got a 59 answered. It says 100%. We must have lost somebody. Nope, 62, 64. Okay. All right, I've got 11 people that said true and 53 that said false. Now, What I'm after here is false because it is necessary to annotate the reason for the deduction. And that's a part of the transparency of this. It's also part of helping the entrant improve for the next time. They get the score sheets afterwards and they see what was taken off for, so they can go and improve for the next time they come back. Okay? So that's important. It's also hard to keep up and write fast enough to keep up with some of the judges like me, but all right, let's do number 10.
You got to put up your PowerPoint. Right?
Okay. No, 10
no,
is a,
no,
10's a
right.
narrative.
Oh, that's right. It is. Okay, sorry.
Okay, this is the last narrative question. Question 10, the minimum increment for which to assign deductions is A, B, C, or D. A is 1/10 of a point. B is 1/4 of a point. C is 1/2 of a point. And D is 0.25, 1/4 of a point. And so select the best answer. Okay, again, the minimum increment for which to assign deductions is. And we have 62. Okay, so we'll go ahead. Now, 1/4, B is the correct answer. We've got a couple of folks that answered C or D. B is the correct answer, 1/4 of a point expressed as a fraction. Expressed as a fraction and not as a decimal. It turns out it's just really easier to find them on the page and add them up when you're doing the scoring if we use fractions, and that's why we use fractions.
Right, right. Because when they're expressed as decimals, it's not everybody writes clearly. So
Yeah, it's just a lot easier to total it all up. Okay, now we're going to go to scoring questions, and I'm going to have to share my screen to do that. So let me run over here. Yeah, legible. Someone, Nancy points out, legible handwriting would be really nice. You certainly need that.
yes, the tabulators will appreciate that.
Okay, I'm going to go share screen, and hopefully I'll come up with the right screen, because otherwise you're going to see the answer. Okay, which one are you seeing there?
Okay, you're good. You got the full thing.
Got the right one. Okay.
That's the right one. Okay, so now I'm gonna. Now this is where you may need to move the polling question over on your screen by grabbing the top bar.
Yeah, and I'm not seeing one of the screens I need to see. Let me see if I can get that up. Okay, there's the screen I need. So you're still just seeing a picture of a car, right?
Yeah, and then I've got the poll up. Everybody should see
Okay.
the poll too.
Yeah, you might need to move the poll around. I'll read you the question. How many points should you deduct for just what you see in this picture? You are the glass, lights, rubber, and trim judge. The car is a 1985 380 SL. And you've got 4 choices. And for all the rest of the questions, the choices are all the same. A is 1/4, B is 2 deductions of a quarter, C is 3 deductions of a quarter, and D is 4 deductions of a quarter. And we're going to discuss this. Oh, I got a check mark too. Interesting.
Yeah, I would say where'd that check mark come from?
Somebody annotated the slide. I don't think I did that.
Yeah.
Okay, who's annotating? Stop annotating. See, I didn't know you could do that. Okay, so how many points should you deduct for just what you see in the picture? Now, I recognize that for some of you, the resolution may not show you everything that I'm after. In this picture, it should. The next one is a little bit more of a challenge.
Okay, Jim cannot move the question, cannot see the car.
Cannot see the car. Can you see it?
I can see it.
That's a little odd.
I can.
Oh, he's probably got the question block sitting in front of the car.
Yeah, he's got the question. You got to move the question over the.
You grab the question block up at the top and just move it. And you can move it all around so you can get it out of the way of the car.
Yeah, I wonder if on an iPad whether you can move it or not.
Yeah, and somebody's got annotation on it. It's actually annotated, which is a little odd too. It's not me.
Okay, well, I'll take down the question and then you guys can
Yep.
talk about that without sharing. You can tell the results. You know what,
Yeah.
the next question, Gary?
I lost my screen.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, if you
Lost
can't,
the screen, well, if you go down into your taskbar or whatever, and did you lose the whole Zoom window?
you're obviously,
No,
still up?
I lost the question. I couldn't see. I tried to move the question out of the way to see the car.
Oh, okay, well, don't worry about it. You're, you're. Oh, we got somebody
Okay.
who
Took
got-
it down anyway.
I'm gonna put her
Okay.
in. Okay.
Okay, it stayed.
Okay.
Gary,
So
the
I've got,
next question, let's put the picture up. We'll let them look at it and then I'll launch the poll.
okay, that sounds like a reasonable approach. And I've got it, about 55 answered with a fairly even distribution. Answer. We'll have to have some discussion on this one.
Okay, you got the answers there?
This is
It's
Bernie Long. I'm not getting the question.
It may have pulled off your window. Well, what do you think the answer? How many points you deduct what you see? You're the glass, lights, rubber, and trim person. How many points would you take off? Put you on the spotlight. Okay, well, hopefully we're still up. Looks like everybody's still moving. Okay, I got 56. Looks like some people probably lost the window, so we'll just go ahead with it. And it's interesting, what I've seen in the distribution of answers is I've got 19 A's, I've got 22 B's, I've got 9 C's and 6 D's, which is kind of interesting. What I was after here, and maybe you're seeing some things I didn't see, what I was after is one deduction of a quarter. And what I was really wanting to point out on this one is that if you can see my cursor, notice the chrome trim over the wheel wells, which is not supposed to be on a 107. And so we are under, on the score sheet, we're under side trim, antenna, side mirrors, total of 2 points for all that stuff. Remember, one is condition, one's originality. And so I'd probably take off a quarter point if you, assuming the mirror's okay and the side trim's okay, and a little bit of the antenna that you can see is okay. So
Gary, this is Bernie Long. That was my view, but I couldn't vote.
okay, well, that's okay. You're participating in the discussion, so you know I'm satisfied with that.
Yeah.
On the next one, we're going to splash up the picture, and then we're just going to let you look at it for a while. Then we're going to put up the poll.
Yeah.
Now, so I'm kind of interested in what other people saw to take off for on this car, because
Pinstripe.
say again, pinstripe. Ah,
That's a quarter and a quarter.
You are. Remember, I said you're the glass, lights, rubber, and trim judge. Pinstripe's not on your score sheet for that. Okay.
The windows are down, I noticed.
Yeah, you would normally judge this car with the windows up and the top up, but that's less of a deduction than it is just tell the owner, ask the owner to raise the top and put the windows up.
What about the door edge guard?
Ah,
He can see it.
you are the glass, lights, rubber, and trim judge. That's not on your score sheet. Wait till
That's
the
not
next.
That's
Wait till
not
the next.
considered trim.
No, I don't consider that trim. And my guidance to you, let's get to the next. I'll answer that question on the next question. Okay.
Okay.
All right, let's go to the next one.
The front rubber bumper doesn't look correct right in front of the air dam.
Up here.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm right or not, but
I think that's a driving light sticking down here, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
And then that's the spoiler piece there. That might be a driving light, or maybe something hanging.
and the notch above it is.
It's a curb cut.
Yeah, there could be some damage. Hard to tell. You know, in reality, you go up and look at it closely and see what it really is.
Right.
But I
It
was
just doesn't
really
look
after.
right to me. Yeah.
I was really after these guards. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, if I just roll this slide, should be able to get to the next one. Nope, nope. There. Okay, that is actually the next one. Those annotations are still up there, which is a little weird. All right, so the next question, and we're not going to pop it up yet. We're going to give you a little time to look. How many points would you deduct for what you see in the picture? You are now the paint and Coachwork judge. same picture. You are now the paint and coachwork judge. It's an 85 through 80 SL. Okay, go ahead and.
Is there supposed to be a new picture?
It is exactly the same picture as it was. So the answer is no, it's not supposed to be a new picture. It's exactly the same picture. Diana, when you look at that picture, do you see green annotations on it, or is it just on my screen? You're muted.
Yes, I see green annotations, but I don't know how to get rid of them.
Yeah, I don't either. That's odd.
When those showed up, all I caught was the name Eric by him. So
No,
Eric that annotate him.
Oh, I made it go away.
Good, okay.
I was gonna say all you do is use your eraser.
Yeah. Yeah, I just turned off annotations and it went away. Okay, so go ahead and answer this question. It's how many points would you deduct for what you see in this picture? And our previous discussion might be helpful to you. You are the paint coachwork judge. The car is an 85 through 80 SL. Okay, we got 56 answers. So looks like we have a distribution of 20 people for A, 27 people for B, 9 people for C, and 1 person for D, which is kind of interesting. Okay, what I was after here was C, 3 deductions of a quarter, but certainly there's room for negotiation or interpretation here. What I was really after was the pinstripe here, and I took a quarter off for that. And then under gaps, door hood, and deck lid, the fender or the door lip edge guard here, which is of course not a factory piece, and it deprives you from the ability to really see how good this gap is. So I'd probably take a quarter point off for that. And I might actually, take another quarter point for the other side on that one. And I will point out that the car's top needs to be up and the windows need to be up for this judging. But so we already discussed, maybe there's a piece missing out over here. Anything else that people want to comment on this one?
So Gary, let me understand that you would do a quarter point and a quarter point as is.
Yeah, I'm looking at the two edge protectors, and here's my logic on that. When you're looking at gap, doors, hood, deck lid, which is where you are with that edge protector, and there's really 8 gaps on this car that you're looking at. It's the 2 on the hood, the 2 on the trunk, maybe 2 to 4 on the doors, maybe 8 to 10 gaps. So each gap's worth about a quarter point. And you go to the other side of the car and there's an edge protector on that too, you're deprived of the ability to look at that gap. And so I might do 2 times a quarter on that one, and that could be justified in that. But whatever you do with that, do it the same way in every car that has the same issue. And that's the essence of consistency on it.
The
All right.
Hills mentioned dirt buildup on the front compared to the rear wheel. The only thing I'll say about that is where did the dirt, is it new dirt or old dirt? If it's probably new dirt, it probably happened on the way to the concourse.
Yeah, we don't usually penalize people for things that happen on the way to the concourse. And, some of the brake pads are so soft that you get brake dust on the car in a drive of 100 miles. Now, reasonably, I'll try to usually wipe that off before the show, but.
Well, no, I don't think, okay, Bruce, I don't think we said 2 points for the door guards. I think it was a quarter point for the door guards, right?
Yeah, I was looking at 2 deductions of a quarter point.
Yeah,
so.
two deductions for a quarter point, Bruce, so.
Yeah, a total of 2 points off would be way too much because that's the entire category.
Well, the way I read that was if you're looking on this side of the car and you're doing the door guard and the pinstripe on this side, why wouldn't you just do the pinstripe on the other side and the door guard on the other side as well?
Yeah, but you just do it for the whole
was
car.
That was my question. If you're taking a quarter for pinstripe on one side, quarter for pinstripe on the other,
No.
just like you're doing a quarter on a door guard on one side and a quarter on a door guard on the other.
Yeah, when I wrote this, when I originally wrote this question, I actually was taking off 2 points or taking off a quarter on pinstripe on each side. And just kind of through discussion with Diana and kind of decided maybe 1 quarter is okay. You could justify that because if you're calling it imperfection in paint, you've got a total of 5 points there. Yeah, you could justify taking off a quarter on each side. I was more concerned about the door guard because you can pretty much easily divide the number of gaps by the number of points you have and come up with an amount that each of them is worth. And so that's more clear. There's a lot more judgment in the pinstripe thing. But whatever you do, if you take off 1 quarter or 2 deductions of a quarter for the pinstripe, do it the same way on every car. That's the most important piece. Okay. All right, let's go to the next one. I will roll the slide. Okay. And I'll read the question and she'll pop it up here in just a little bit. But the question is, question number 13. You are the paint and coachwork judge. How many points should you deduct for just what you see in this picture? The car is a 1996 SL 600. Okay, so you're the paint and coachwork judge, and you can certainly use your score sheet as you're trying to figure out this answer. How many points should you deduct for just what you see in this picture? It's a 1996 SL 600. Okay, so take a good look at that, and it's like we've got the question popped up. Okay, so let's go ahead and start answering the questions. Okay, so we have 34 rapidly getting answers in. Okay, 48, 49. Okay, 53, 54. Okay, looks like it's paused at about 54. All right, so the answers that I have are 38 people came up with a deduction of a quarter point. 14 came up with 2 deductions of a quarter point, and 2 came up with 3 deductions of a quarter point, and 1 came up with 4 deductions of a quarter point. So let's look at this, and I'm not sure I covered this point very well. But if you pick up that score sheet and look at the bottom of the second page, and it quotes rule 6.6.2G, light alloy wheel are a factory option for the 1970 year. Then the next line says, deduct a half point for non-conforming wheels. Now this is a 1996 SL 600, and it is not a sport variant. You can tell it's not a sport variant because it doesn't have a sport badge here, and it doesn't have the aero package kind of lower body work, but it's got these AMG wheels. Okay, you don't see AMG wheels on a non-sport variant, and those wheels came out in the middle of 1999. So it's actually the incorrect wheels for the car, and that's what I was getting at on this question. And the score sheet pretty much tells you how much to take off for non-conforming wheels. It's a half a point, and so the answer I was after on this one was a half a point deduction. Now you have to have some knowledge of 129 authenticity on this one to even pick that up, because the wheels look correct on the car, but they're actually not for that year car. If that was a 2001 or 2002 car, those wheels would be correct. And the second half of 99, those would probably be correct. But on a 99, it would only be correct if it said sport on it. The 2001 and 2002s all say sport, so those wheels would be correct. Now, the other thing I'll point out, note, the radio antenna is bent. In the question, I said, you're the paint and coachwork judge. Antenna is not on your score sheet, so you ignore that. Note also, there's a sticker on this window, and I didn't get close enough to see whether that was a Mercedes original sticker about the theft system or whether it's something else. But that's not on your score sheet. You're the paint and coachwork judge, not the glass, rubber, lights, rubber, chrome judge. So you got to stay in your lane on the score sheet. Did anyone else see anything else on this car that they wanted to discuss that I missed?
Hey, Gary, what about the lower body cladding, all being painted black? That just looks incorrect to me.
It's a 96. They should all be the same color. 94 and earlier had the contrasting lower cladding.
The silver, okay.
Yeah, that's okay for that car.
So what's the correct answer then for this question?
Well, what I was after was a half a point, 1/4 B. And primarily because of what the score sheet says, and that's actually a quote from the rule book. But it's challenging because you have to know 129s to know that.
If you look carefully, you could see dings in the door, but it could be a reflection of the ground. I mean, the picture, it's not very good, and it's really hard to tell.
Yeah, that's a hard one for door dings, and you're better off for door dings kind of getting up the front quarter or the back quarter and shining down the line of it. Yeah, I do see this kind of funny thing here, but I think that might be a reflection of something. And of course, you get back to the if you're in doubt, don't deduct for it. Okay. All right.
Hey, Gary, can I ask one other quick question?
Sure.
I'm just looking over the score sheet to see where tires would be. I know wheels are included under paint and coachwork. Are tires under a different section? Because my guess is on this particular vehicle for that year, they probably did not have 18-inch wheels, probably 17. And these look like 18-inch wheels.
Yeah, on the score sheet, the tire only shows up under chassis for the show class. And the tires do not show up at all on the street class. And so you're really not scoring the tires.
Okay.
Unless this is in show class. And I don't think this one's old enough for show class yet.
No.
25 years. Yeah, it's around the edge. It could be in either class. Yeah, you could, if this thing is in show class, then you have the ability to take off for the tires as well, because they are not the correct size for the car.
Yeah, I knew the wheels were wrong, but I only put a quarter deduction instead of a half.
Yeah. I didn't cover that line very well in the presentation, but it's right there on the score sheet. And you'll always have this score sheet with you, so it's right there. You don't even have to memorize that stuff. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, I'm going to slide to the next picture. All right. Now, for this one, no, clearly you're the interior judge. And the question is simply, how many points do you deduct for what you see in this picture? So, how many points do you deduct for what you see in this picture? Okay, we have 30 so far. Okay, we have 53, 54. We're getting near the full number. Okay, 55, 56, 7. Okay, I think I'm going to call that everybody. So what I see is 10 for a quarter, 21 for 2 deductions of a quarter, 19 for 3 deductions of a quarter, and 7 for 4 deductions of a quarter. Okay, and here's what I was after. I was really after 4 deductions of a quarter. And so what you see in this picture, it's got a non-stock radio sitting up here. So that's a quarter deduction. And the logic on that, when it's dash, instrument, radio, glove box, center console, there's 3 points maximum in here that you could take off. So we have a non-authentic radio in good condition. We have a misalignment of the radio. No, it's higher on the right than the left. That might be beating a dead horse. You've also got, and something you very often see on these cars, cracks in the wood. So maybe a quarter for cracked wood. And the reason that I actually selected this picture is the shift knob, because that is not a correct shift knob for this car. The car is, I think, of like a 76 450 SLC, not the correct shift knob. And so that's an authenticity deduction on the shift knob for probably a quarter. But we're also kind of getting up there. And what I mean is it's a 3-point area. 3 points for dash, instrument, radio, glove box, and center console. And I pretty much added 4 deductions of a quarter. So that's a total of a point. And we haven't even looked at the rest of the instruments and such. And so I wouldn't go any farther than, say, 4 deductions of a quarter on this one.
I can barely see that radio, and without seeing the whole car, I had no idea that gear shift lever was wrong, because you can't see the whole car to know what year the car is to be able to differentiate that. Because on some of the newer ones, they look more like that.
Well, yeah, I guess that's a little artificial, because you'd of course know what you were judging when you entered the car.
Yeah.
And I kind of knew what it was when I selected it.
Gary, there's also dirty carpet, and I happen to agree
Yeah, I
with
went
that
with the
comment. I
dirty
couldn't
carpet,
stand
and I
it.
went with the poor quality of the wood.
Yeah, there's certainly dirty carpet, no doubt, and that's well within your area on judge. The other thing that you could take off for over there, if you really wanted to go over there, note this. Note the pedal.
Yeah.
The pedal is worn a lot. The other thing that was interesting about this car, where I say you get better at looking at cars, the wear on this pedal. This car was advertised as a 13,000 mile car. And if you look at the wear on that pedal, it's not a 13,000 mile car. Somebody put an old pedal pad on it. But yeah, so you could certainly go off in the carpet direction. There's 2 points in carpet. You could easily take off a quarter point, or even more than that, a half point perhaps, for the left side, driver's side carpet.
Well, those carpets shouldn't be left in. I'd take off a quarter point for leaving them in. They should be taken out.
Yeah, there's probably a hole under that.
Right.
Okay. Anyway, so I apologize for the quality of the picture. This was an eBay ad that I found. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, I'm going to roll to the next one. The person that's in the waiting room, I don't recognize the name. Do you?
I don't either, and I'm not letting them in.
Okay. All right. So, and the question on this one. All right. You are the engine compartment judge. How many points should you deduct for just what you see in this picture? The car is a 1961 190 SL. 1961 190 SL engine compartment judge. All right. So figure out how much you want to deduct.
I'll give you a minute to kind of look at this, or
yeah,
a few seconds anyhow, to look at it.
Yeah, there's a lot in this slide.
Well, and the iPad, you know, when you pop up the question, it covers the picture.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so it's popped up. Yeah, I'm doing this with a dual display and it's actually popping up on the other screen, which is really nice. Okay. And people are answering. Okay, so we have 53 answers, 54. 56. Okay, I'm going to go with 56. So looks like our distribution of answers, we have 13 people for 2 deductions of a quarter, 27 for 3 deductions of a quarter, and 16 for 4 deductions of a quarter. And part of this is probably going to be limited by the resolution of your monitor. I know that every time I looked at this, I found more stuff. And my answer was 4 deductions of a quarter point each. And let me point out some of the things on this one, because I think you could probably find more stuff than that. Under engine, 25 points max. Cooling system is 2 points. And so condition of the radiator. Notice all these little dings where the fins on the radiator have been dinged. So I'd probably take a quarter off for that. Under hoses and clamps, which is a 2-point area, note these 2 clamps here, and resolution on some of your machines may not show you this, but these 2 are Yankee clamps. And so I take off a quarter for that. I'm a little suspicious that these 2 might be Yankee clamps as well, but I didn't deduct for them because I couldn't exactly tell. On the fuel, there's corrosion up here on the fuel line. There's corrosion on these bolt heads. This linkage piece right here should be a yellow CAD plated item, and it's totally corroded over. And so in the corrosion links place, I'd probably have 3 deductions of a quarter. And the longer I look at this thing, the more things I see. So it would probably be more than a quarter. I really doubt, even if this is a cut piece, this piece of hose here, even if this is cut from a straight cylindrical section of hose, I don't think it would have come from the factory with an irregular cut like this. They would have used a very straight cutter, and there's kind of frayed edges on both ends of that. So, I mean, there's a lot in this little picture on this 190 SL. I just apologize if your screens are not able to resolve all the things. Note that the finish is probably pretty good. This is not overly polished. This is about the way these things look. But there's a lot in engine compartments, and it's very helpful to just go down the score sheet to help focus your attention on what's in there. Okay, any other comments on this one before we proceed? Okay, let's go to the next one. And I'll roll that one up. There are 2 pictures in this one. Okay. This one, okay, and the car is a 560 SL. And I'm going to roll to the other picture here. And you are, the question basically is that you are the paint and coachwork judge. And you see this car. And I'm rolling back and forth between the 2 pictures. And I hope you have the resolution to see what I'm trying to point out on this one. Okay, I'm going to leave it on this one. Let's pop the question up. Okay, so let's go ahead and answer this one. The question being, you're the paint and coachwork judge, how much would you deduct for what you see in these pictures? And it's a 560 SL. And I'm a little worried that you're not going to be able to resolve on your monitor what I'm trying to point out too. Okay, we have 51, 52, almost there. Okay, show 55. So let's just talk through this one. You know, when I originally wrote this one, I wrote this for A being the answer. And I've only got 2 people that selected A. I've got 14 people that selected B. I've got 30 that selected C and 11 that selected D. And I actually think right now that C, 3 deductions of a quarter, is probably the best answer. And that's what the majority of you also selected. What I was after on this, it's a unique case. If you see over here, the center plastic window has the appropriate embossed thing that shows that that's an original center window. The left side window here doesn't have it. And if I swap to this one, the right one here doesn't have it. So this is a unique case where someone has gone in and replaced the plastic in the side windows and not the center window, which is unusual to say the least. It's one of the things I've very seldom seen. So let me get back to where I was, flipping my slides too far. Okay, so how would I judge this? Well, it's a non-originality in the top, but most of the top's original. And so, you know, there's only 2 points in the top. 1 point's for originality and 1 point's for condition. And so originality, I'd probably take a quarter point off. And then you can discuss, well, the top's kind of dirty and wrinkled and the center window is kind of wrinkled up. So maybe there's another quarter point there. And then as I was just finishing up on the brief, I noticed, oh, there's a pinstripe on this car too. So, you know, that's within your area of paint and coachwork. So maybe that's another quarter point, which is kind of why I said the 3 deductions of a quarter point is probably the best answer. Anybody else have any comments on this one?
So if you go back to the other, go ahead,
Yeah,
sorry.
Carter Jenkins said talks about paint condition, but maybe the condition of the paint isn't.
Yeah, if you look along
Go back to the other
edges,
picture.
yeah, you go back to the other picture, you'll see along the door there.
The door gap.
Well, and also just above the door handle on that reveal there, the paint looks like it's worn or very dull. Up even higher than that. But right by the flash, yeah, right in there and to forward of that.
Okay.
It also looks like that the driver's side door paint is slightly different than the quarter behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really just trying to show the top piece of this, but you know, realistically, you would walk around the car and shine the light around it so that you can get a better assessment of the door gap and whether the paint really match. It is kind of interesting that there's more reflection here than there is here. You would probably expect that reflection to continue, but you really have to move around to see that kind of stuff too. And it's hard to see from that picture. I really wanted to point out the lack of the embossed piece in both those side windows. And in fact, another little hint that those have been changed. Look at the way that this seam is. I mean, that was probably done by hand, and it's not done very well over in here. So that's a tipper that someone's changed one of those window plastic pieces. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Okay, here's a picture of a car, and you are the paint and coachwork judge. How many points would you deduct for what you see here? This car just sold for a little over $400,000.
Yeah, this is a 1952 300S Roadster.
Yeah, it's a 1952 300S. Yep, Roadster. Thank you, Diana.
I want this car, by the way.
Yes, this is a nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually never seen one of these in a concours that I've judged, but okay, the question is up there. Okay, people are answering.
Hi, I've lost the ballot. It's Bernie.
Did it shift off your screen?
Yeah, I mean, it comes up right in the middle. You have to move it. And,
Yeah, and moved it away.
and it's gone. Yeah, I don't know how.
Well, I'll just have to call on you and ask you what your answer is then.
How about punt? No, it's a very beautiful car.
This is a
It is a
beautiful
very nice
car.
car.
Yeah, the top looks good. The
I'm just
There-
finding it,
perfection. Well, you got a gap problem.
Okay, so we got 54 people answered, and let's see, 34 of them said 1/4.
Yeah, I beat a
16
quarter.
said 2 deductions of 1/4, and 4 said 3 deductions of 1/4. And what I was after on this one is the trunk gap.
Yeah,
And you look at the left side of it here, there's visible gap, and on the right side, it looks like it's almost touching. And so that's what I see here is 1 deduction of 1/4. I'll point out that, you could question whether this MA tag really ought to be on the car. But if you're the paint and coachwork judge, that's really a glass trim chrome item. And so it's really not your issue. I did
Yeah,
try to look up
actually,
these cars.
I'm
and
actually very familiar with this car.
Okay.
That car was originally sold to Morocco.
Mhm.
That is a Moroccan license plate, and
Mhm.
that is the country insignia, like you'd have D for Deutschland. That's MA. That's the original Morocco insignia or country code tag on there.
Yeah, so I
So
probably
that
wouldn't
would
take
be
off for that.
original.
I looked up these cars. I saw about half of them had this and half of them didn't, but even in other countries. But the issue really is you're the paint and coachwork judge. That's really not yours. So I dodged that one. But yeah, this is a very nice car. Anything else anybody wants to comment about they saw that might be deficient on this?
I'm just finding it hard without knowing all the intricacies of each of the models to really catch everything, because I feel like I'm more up on the model for the car that I actually own, but all of these others, if you don't own one and are aware of a lot of these intricacies, you're missing them, because I know I'm bombing this part of the test atrociously because of it.
Well, the point is that just about every judge is going to be in your position. We all tend to be knowledgeable on the specific car we own and not as knowledgeable on the others. And that's the part of make sure you give the entrant the benefit of the doubt. And if you're in doubt, kind of, go off and whisper in the chief judge's ear, but don't take off for something you're not sure of. But for this one, trunk gap is unique, is the same for each car. They're all Mercedes come up with really, really good gaps. And that's what I was after on this one. And so I would expect everyone to be able to get the gap thing.
There's a larger gap on the fender on the right side to the bumper than there is on the fender on the left side to the bumper.
So about here and there,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Right.
Yep. I think I'd do that in the glass and chrome trim one. So I probably wouldn't do that under the answer to this question.
Okay.
And the other piece, remember too, this picture is taken from slightly left of center of the car. And you need to look at those things from exactly the center. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that the trunk gap is kind of off, but I would want to look very closely at these gaps to make sure that they really are off in that way.
Eric, just unmute and go ahead and.
Who's that?
Eric Gilmer,
Sure.
he's got his raised hand.
Okay, Eric. Eric, we see your hand raised, but you're invisible. Okay, I'm sure he'll come in when he wants to.
Okay.
All right, let's go to the next one. Can we flip this picture up? And this is number 18 of 20. This is actually the same car, okay? And so it's a 1952 300S. How would you score, you're the engine compartment judge, how would you score the battery charging system area? Okay, so how would you score the battery charging system area 1952 300S? recognize the resolution of your screen may make this a little bit difficult. So we have 41, 43. Okay, we're at 52, 53. Okay, I'm going to call that just about everybody. What I see is 13 people had a deduction of a quarter, 32 had deductions of 2 quarters, and 7 had deductions of 3 quarters, and 1 had deductions of 4 quarters. And remember that I limited you to battery and charging system. Okay, battery and charging system has in it only 2 points. Battery and charging system total. So you have to be cognizant of how many points you have to play with here. And it's battery charging system, so it's really, you're looking at the battery and the voltage regulator and any wires that you can see that are a part of that. And the thing that should absolutely leap out at you is it says die hard on the battery, and that's clearly not what would have been in a 1952 300S. And so there's a quarter there, and you may be limited in resolution to see this, but up here, note that the battery hold down is significantly larger than the battery. And so the battery is really not the right size for the car either. And it's also, notice how it's not oriented straight. It's kind of cocked in there. And if you see a battery that's kind of cocked inside the battery hold down area, you kind of have to ask yourself the question, what's going on with the hold downs? Your resolution may not allow you to see this, but over here on this side, you see the hold down bolt over here. And over here, it appears the hold down bolt is also missing, which is probably why the battery is kind of cocked in there sideways. So I think I would probably do, what I was looking for here was 3 deductions of 1 quarter because of those essentially 3 aspects of what I've just discussed. And that seems about right for a total area of 2 points. The voltage regulator looks really, really good, and the wires look really, really good. And overall, this is a really good engine compartment. But the battery kind of jumps out at you on this one. Any other comments on this before we go on? Okay. All right, next to the last one, next picture. Here we go. All right, this is a let me flip to this. Okay, what we're looking at is a 1984 500 SL, a 1984 500 SL. And you are the glass, lights, trim, chrome judge. How many points should you deduct for this car? Okay, so you are the glass, lights, rubber, and trim judge. Okay, so the question has popped up. Go ahead and start answering. Okay, so we have 45 answers, a few more answers coming in. Okay, with 57, ooh, even more answers. Okay, so, well, I've got 15 people that say a quarter. I've got 27 people that say 2 deductions of a quarter. I've got 12 people that says 3 deductions of a quarter and 3 that say 3 deductions of a quarter. And what I was after on this one, remember, I really verbally specified glass, lights, rubber, and trim. And the thing I was trying to test on this is the European headlights issue. And this is what you see here is European headlights and European bumpers. Now, I mentioned the car is an 84 500 SL. Now, you probably, if you're familiar with 107s, you realize this car was not sold in the United States. This has to be a European delivery or European model car. And so for this car, the European front bumpers and the European headlights are correct. And so that is not penalized because that's how the car was delivered as a Euro spec car because it's a European car. Now, so what did I take off for? Well, I only took off 1 deduction of a quarter. And what did I take that off for? Well, the only odd thing about this car really I see is that the windshield wipers are parking too high. There's something wrong with the park. They're supposed to, this wiper sits level when it's parked correctly. And I verified that by looking at a lot of pictures of 107s. So I only took off 1 quarter. I see a couple of you took off a few extras. You could probably justify the bumper here is a little low on this side compared to that side. So maybe there's a quarter in there. And I'm interested in hearing what else y'all found out. Pipe
Steve
in.
Chapman says the left fog light condition.
Left fog. Oh yeah, yeah. Comparing the 2 fog lights, this lens is not as good as that lens. So this lens has probably been replaced and that one wasn't. So they don't match. So yeah, you could justify that.
Possibly looking at
I
the
guess I
whole-
assumed that all the cars were going to be US market cars, so I deducted for all the European stuff I was seeing. So I had no way to know that that was a Euro car without being told it, so.
Yeah, that's a subtlety on that. And you just kind of, you really kind of have to know that on this one in particular. And this is probably not something you're going to see, but you never
Because a
know.
lot of people do these things and they write about doing it, so I just assume that that's what happened.
Yep. Yep. The other thing,
License plate holder.
does it have one?
No.
That's okay.
That's okay. I did not have one.
Yeah, it's got the fill panel for the license plate on it. And so for states that don't have front license plates, that's perfectly fine.
In
Georgia,
Europe, they had a lot of it.
what's that?
In Europe, a lot of countries required that.
Well, and you can see that this would be a European license plate.
I don't know if
Kinda
it's
hard
the
to see.
glare of the photo. Maybe the left side of the hood alignment looks to be a hair off of the one on the right, looking at the photo.
Did we lose Gary?
I think we've lost Gary.
I think we've lost you. Uh-oh, we've got one more question. But I could pop it up. Yes, we have lost Gary. Okay, one more time. He's coming back in.
Yeah, it looks like I'm back. I apologize for that. I promise you I'll buy a new computer before we do this again. All right. I need to screen share again to show that picture. So let me go do that. It should be maybe that one. Okay, what do you see?
Okay, we see it. We see
Okay,
it.
still seeing the 500 SL?
Yeah, the red 500.
All right, this is the last question. And take a look at this picture. And the question is, you are the paint and coachwork judge. How many points should you deduct for what you see in this picture? The car is a 1991 500 SL. 1991 500 SL. You're the paint and coachwork judge. How many points should you deduct for what you see in this picture? Yeah, I mean, you could assume that the rest of the front of the car is like this as well. Okay, so we have the poll popped up. We're up to 50 already. That's good. Okay, 56, that looks like pretty much everybody. Okay, so what I was after in this one is to make the point of, okay, so you've got a car with a lot of stone chips. What are you going to do with it? And I see 20 of you took off 1/4, 30 of you took off 2 deductions of 1/4, and 6 took off 3 deductions of 1/4. So we're in paint and coach work, total of 25 points, and we're in imperfections in paint, which is a total of 5 points. And this car has a lot of stone chips. And as I said in the presentation earlier about door dings, you can't just take 1/4 off for every stone chip, or you'll be way over the amount of points that are allocated for that area. And so you have to make a decision on what are you going to do. And you know, my sense on this one is probably 2 deductions of 1/4 is probably okay, assuming no other paint issues. And the paint on this car otherwise looks really pretty good. And so, you know, 2 deductions of 1/4 is probably okay. And, you know, just about every car in the street class, just about every car that's been driven routinely is going to have stone chips. Some will have more than others, but, you know, at the age of this car, this amount of stone chips is probably fairly normal. So maybe 2 deductions of 1/4. Now, if you decide that 3 deductions of 1/4 was better, you know, you could justify that as well. You're in a 5-point category, but the most important part of this is that you need to be consistent from car to car. And so, you know, this many stone chips is 3 deductions of 1/4, and the next car has this many stone chips. That needs to be 3 deductions of 1/4, because consistency is the key to this. So is there anything else that anybody wanted to comment on this question?
Open up the chat window, Gary. I think there's quite a few from Steve and Chet,
Okay.
and I think Chet asked a really good question about touched up stone chips.
Let me get the chat up just a second.
Okay, so Steve says that this is the wrong grill for 600 SL. Bumper should not be painted.
No, the grill looks like a 600 SL grill, and if this is a 91 500 SL, then it's the wrong grill.
Oh, you're right.
And then I don't think those bumpers should be silver, not painted red.
You know, you're right about that. Those had multiple colored 94 and earlier. You are right. And I think you're right about that grill too. It's a number of things.
Yeah.
Good catch.
Yeah, but let's answer Chet's comment about this touched up stone chips. Is that a deduction?
The, you know, I would defer that to the chief judge. I've seen some rules, not ours, say that a touched up stone chip does not get deducted for. Our rules do not say that. And so, you know, a well touched up stone chip is really different from an open stone chip that allows rust or something else to form. So you could certainly deduct less points for a well touched up stone chip than a non-touched up stone chip. This might be something the chief judge wants to put out in the meeting beforehand. That's the benefit of having walked through the group of cars and anticipating what issues might come up in advance and kind of addressing them. Eric, did you have anything you might want to add in that?
Well, the only other thing, and I have to go check it, is that the wiper seems odd for a 91. I thought they were the ones that came across and over, but it could just be, I'm comparing it to a 124 and I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think that's the right wiper.
Is it? All right. I do know that the reds and the whites in the early SLs, the 19, they allowed them to have them repainted because they were so ugly that nobody could stand them. There was kind of a maroon red on top of a bright red, and it just really looked odd. And the gray and white kind of blended or clashed a bit. So I don't know. We'd have to look at that one.
Yeah, I think these are okay wipers. I see a comment from Wolfgang. It says under the blinker, you can see the bad paint job. Maybe, yeah, I'm not sure how much of that's a reflection. You know, this is where you'd really want to just look at the car, get down on your knees and see. And it's hard to take from the paint.
Yeah, I took down your screen sharing, Gary, so.
Okay, so we're not, I'm not pointing that at anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. That was a good comment on the number of slats, though. I know that, but I didn't pick it up on that one. And okay, so that's the end of the quiz. And the point of the quiz was really to get you to kind of, you know, make a decision, and then we'll talk through the decision. And you notice that we didn't all come up with the same answers, but the answers are grouped fairly tightly. But the real point is, as you go through a line of cars, that if you're consistent in the way you judge them, then you'll come up with the same ranking of scores as a different set of judges will generally. And that's the objectivity and the benefit of the use of the scoring sheet, and why consistency is so important in what we do. And so, you know, I thank you for bearing with me for this period of time. And I thank you for bearing with my computer dropping 3 times. I really apologize for that. I will replace the computer before next time we do this. But any other questions anybody has before we sign off?
I'll just address certificates. We will be putting together a list of names that completed the courses and sending those off. They typically will take somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks from the National Business Office for you to get them. So hold tight. If you don't see one after that time frame, please feel free to you know, contact us. And we will be sending out, you know, the slides and supporting materials from the class.
And I thank you all for participating. For those of you that are close enough, please come and help us judge on the 18th of September at our concours at Halcyon. We do need, you know, having enough judges is always the biggest challenge. So come give us a hand with that. We really appreciate it. And
yeah. And even if you don't feel confident that you think that you can judge, you should come and do it anyhow. I mean, you can always scribe and you will always learn. So first time I judged, I didn't want to do it, but you know what? That's just how you learn.
Well, and there's a question in chat from Rich. Can you judge and show at the same event? You can't. You just can't judge in the class that your car is. And that's why we have a team that has another judge on it, so that you can just not judge that class. And we also, you know, you make some type of provision to call back that judge so he can present their car.
Let's hear, Jordan's got a question. Is Yancey a dealer option or aftermarket?
I don't know what Yancey is. It must be aftermarket because I don't know what it is. What is it? I don't know.
Jordan, you can unmute if you want.
Yeah, Jordan, tell me what you're talking about. I'm not following you.
So I have a 124 sedan. It was imported over from Japan, but it has color matching a Yanase brand floor mats with a coinciding rear window decal. It's blue on blue velour blue paint, blue interior, but the mats are a matching blue with a rubber Yanase brand embossed on the full set of floor mats, as well as a coinciding rear window decal.
I suspect that's probably a dealer installed option, is probably, you know, worth a quarter point deduction or something like that. I've never heard of that though. Eric, have you heard of that?
No, I'm not, but on a 124, we usually have the floor mats removed anyway.
Yeah, typically, but he's still got that decal on the windshield or on the.
I don't know how bad I'd beat him up on that if it came across the thing. Got a Japanese car, there's a lot of nuances in it.
Yeah.
Are
Pretty
the
obvious.
original, are OEM plastic windows still available with the decal, you know, with the embossment on them?
No.
I thought you could buy that top at a very expensive price with the original windows.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure you can, but you could check. I don't think, maybe for some of the newer cars you can, some of the newer SLs, but some of the older ones, I don't believe the OEM tops are available.
Yeah, we didn't find it for my 1970.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's see. Yancy is the Japanese distributor that operates dealerships in Japan. So still a little unclear with what your question is, Jordan.
Whether or not it just should be kept in the car as a like quote unquote OEM piece. It came with the vehicle when it was imported over.
No, in a 124
has about 20.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
On a 124,
uh-huh.
we usually have the floor mats out. It's the newer models where they're actually snapped in or hard to remove that they don't take them out. Most, I would say anything after 2000, the floor mats should be out.
Okay. Yeah, it was just I felt a valid question. The car's only got 20,000 original miles on it, so I assume it came like that with the car as opposed to an aftermarket add-on, but I wasn't sure, so I figured I'd ask.
You can always ask the Classic Center, they'll know.
Well, maybe.
No, definitely will ask them. Thank you guys. I appreciate the
Okay.
inquiry.
Yeah, I mean, Gene says that replacement tops are available from the Classic Center, but I think they are ridiculously expensive if you can get them.
Probably.
I mean, even an aftermarket one for an SL, you know, with installation and everything's roughly $3,000.
Oh, that's it. Richard chats up an interesting. We purchased original W113 plastic rear windows with the logo and sent it to GAHH for a new top. I'm not sure who GAHH is, but that's a neat idea. Rich Carlson asked, are points for mileage and years prorated? No, it's just a point per that increment.
No, they are prorated. They are, or at least in my spreadsheet, they are. They're down to 6 or 8 decimals.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yes, yes. Oh, yeah, yeah. I have an, oh, you know, if anybody wants an electronic score sheet, I guess I could put it out there. I have an Excel file that you can load all your cars and it'll calculate your street cars for those mileage and age things, like set out to like 8 decimal points, and it'll do all the math for you.
Okay. So any other questions? Okay, well, it's nice and quiet. So, well, I thank each of you for participating. I hope to see many of you on the 18th of September when we do this for real. And please just use the score sheet, be consistent, and make sure the entrants want to come back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary and Nancy.
Thank
I really
you.
learned a lot.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it. Learned a lot.
Thank you very much. It was
Thanks
a
so much.
great meeting.
Putting it on.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Great presentation. Did an excellent job.
Now I get to go out and work on an SL 500.